Well, I guess what I'm saying is the line between Rincewind and Eric Idle is so thin in this game that's probably also a reason why I don't think of this as the definitive Rincewind.
Generous to think that there's a line.
That's fair.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Flux.
I'm Ben McKenzie.
Welcome to Pratchett, the monthly Terry Pratchett Book Club podcast.
Each month, we usually discuss one of Terry Pratchett's books or short stories with a special guest.
This month, we're not doing that. We're playing the graphic adventure game Discworld II, Missing Presumed ... Interrobang. Or, if you want to think about it a different way, the game where you bother bees a surprising amount.
And our guest is writer, reviewer, and game designer, Kat Clay. Welcome, Kat.
Thanks so much for having me. Terry Pratchett is one of the biggest influences on my writing, so I'm very excited to be here.
That's very cool. How did you get into Terry Pratchett?
Actually, in the school playground, I kind of was, you're trying to make friends in high school, and of course I was hanging with all the nerds. And I remember one of the guys said, hey, you probably like this book. And the book was Pyramids. And, it was kind of like, yeah, there's this wizard and there's this kind of wacky humor and it's English humor. And I think I just must have picked up the book because I was a big reader. I still am a huge reader, and then proceeded to devour everything that had been published up until that point.
That's cool. Pyramids is an interesting one to start with. How did you find that intro into the Discworld?
I think I left Pyramids for a bit, right? So I think I actually started, I'm a bit of a completionist. So I did start with The Color of Magic, I think, which is not the best place to start, actually, if I was going to recommend people to start with a Terry Pratchett
Agreed.
book. But it just became a bit of an obsession for me. I was at that period where all the cartoons were coming out, soul music. I think it was Weird Sisters. Yeah. Then I had I still have it, the map of Death's Domain on my wall, the map of Ankh-Morpork, the Paul Kidby pictures. I tried to draw my own characters, Ankh-Morpork. I was just obsessed, really.
How did the illustrations turn out? Do you still have them? And also, now that you've seen other illustrations, how did yours compare?
Look, I don't think that I'm not an illustrator by trade, so they were the product of enthusiasm and not talent.
I need that on a mug.
That's cool. Look, I'm definitely here for enthusiasm. It's very, very important. You are a writer. You've written a lot of things, including games, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, at some point. But you said that Pratchett has been a big influence on your writing. How has he influenced your stuff?
Yeah, it's really funny because I don't think sometimes people might see the connection because I'm actually most well known for horror writing and writing horror role-playing games. And for me, when I'm not writing horror, I'm writing social satire. And so I came third in the Scarlet Stiletto Awards in 2018. And the story that I wrote there was it was a satirical story. And between Pratchett and Jane Austen, those two, in terms of their voice and their presence in the story, and especially the way that Pratchett inserts himself in that really strong voice. I've actually just finished writing a fantasy novel last year, which is a kind of dark fantasy, dark academia fantasy, but I'm pitching it as if it was written by Terry Pratchett because it's commenting on social issues. It's set in Victorian London. Unfortunately, you can't read that anywhere, but I really hope one day I can share it with you and all the whimsy.
That sounds great. Look, that seems like a crossover, the Austen-Pratchett crossover. And we've been waiting to happen, I feel. Like we saw a little snippet of what it might look like in Snuff, and I feel like we're ready.
Yep, the ideas are percolating. Austin Pratchett, I am here for this. If anyone wants to write it, please send it my way.
Oh, see, I thought your book was like that.
Well, it's okay, this is me getting nerdy. It's technically Victorian era. So Regency is Austen, which is the early 19th century, whereas Victorian is the mid to late 19th century. But there's this very interesting period where they those eras cross over. Anyway, that is not the topic of this podcast, and you would have me here for 5 hours if it was.
Well, we'll just have to get you back to talk for 5 hours about that. 'Cause it sounds fascinating, but you're right. That isn't what we're here to talk about today. And we have invited you because you are a games writer and a lover of games, and you have played this game and you're a big Terry Pratchett fan. We thought you'd be a perfect guest for this. We're going to talk about the second Discworld game, and we'll begin, as we always do, by reading the blurb. And now, just to give context, as with the first game, this was from the era of boxed computer games. They came in a big cardboard box, usually with a big cardboard insert, and there wasn't that much stuff in the big cardboard box, but they needed to take up a lot of space on a shelf, so people thought they were worth the money that they were charging for them, and they would have a blurb on the back, not dissimilar to a book. And just like the one for the first game, this one is written directly by Terry Pratchett. So here we go. Here's the blurb for Discworld 2, missing presumed... This is the second Discworld game. What do you mean I haven't finished the first one yet? Good grief, some people. Look, give the prunes to the fishmonger, get the dragon to breathe on the mirror, throw the black monk to the crocodiles, and shoot the dragon with the other dragon. Done that? Good. Now, if everyone's caught up... Ahem. This is the second Discworld game. Death has gone missing. A hero is needed to bring him back. But there's only Rincewind, incompetent wizard, and highly trained coward. You won't catch Rincewind running away. He's too fast. Unfortunately, he's all there is that stands between people and the horrible prospect of immortality. No one wants that, do they? We've made DW2 a little easier, snigger, with lots of new locations and even prettier graphics and sounds. As Death himself says,
have fun.
There should be an award for comedy writing specifically for that.
Yeah.
That's very good.
I know, best video game blurb ever. But it's also, I feel like the story around the game, like Discworld, as we discussed in our episode about the first game, you can go back a few episodes and listen to that, listener, if you haven't heard it, is famously one of the most difficult adventure games ever made. The puzzles are very obscure, as we discussed, and I just love, my favorite thing about it is just blatantly, here's spoilers for like 3 of the ridiculous puzzles, 4 of them actually, in this game where people got stuck. I'm just going to tell you. And I remember, I never played this when it came out, but I saw the box. And I remember reading this on the back and I was like, what? I was scandalized at the time. We just spoil some of the puzzles. But I think it's great. I love it. It's just and it just sets you up, I think, so perfectly for the game because like the game itself, it's so self-aware and sort of a meta commentary about video games. It's perfect. I love it.
I think too, I remember playing the first game and actually I think I finished it. But one of the things I was reflecting on when I was rewatching this game and some of Discworld 1 was how as a child or as a teenager, the puzzles made more sense to my kind of childlike brain than they did potentially to me as an adult. And so I actually, because you were more willing to try out weird things, like I vaguely remember there being a rubber chicken at some point. Maybe I'm imagining things. Could be in a Terry Pratchett game. But for me, they were easier to solve. I don't remember Discworld 1 being so hard because part of that was having that imagination that was willing to go in weird places. And so, yeah, coming to this, and also too, this is just bringing back memories of going to the technology shop back in the 90s on the weekend with your parents. And my dad was an IT manager, so he got us into games. I've been playing games since I was a toddler, right? And so we were like, oh, there's new boxes there. Let's check out the boxes. And, you know, you used to have the CDs in there or the floppy disks. And, you know, this is something that we don't have much of anymore.
No, I mean, you can go into like a JB Hi-Fi or something and buy a boxed game, but it's not many people do anymore. Like it's so much better to just download it. Or at least it feels better and more convenient. Of course, there's the whole issue of not really owning any of those games, should push come to shove. But yeah, it's such a different experience. I've talked before on the previous episode about the fact we didn't really have a technology store in my little town that I grew up in that sold video games, like certainly not boxed PC games. We had to go to the Kmart and they really only had console games. But there was a guy in town who would, make a copy of them for you if you knew who to ask. But that was pre this game coming out. Like I didn't have those contacts at the time. This was sort of just as I was about to go to uni. So it was one that was kind of, I missed because I was in that transition of moving from one city to another. And also at the time I'd kind of started to get into a different style of game. I'd played a lot of adventure games and I still did play a lot of adventure games. But, I think Discworld II might have been, I don't know if it was harder to get, but by the time I was in Melbourne and looking in stores in Melbourne, it wasn't on shelves anymore. So I kind of missed it, I think. Maybe.
You were going to CMOT Dibbler for your video games, were you?
What would he say? Popping adventures. Popping adventures. That's what he'd say if he was in this game selling video games. But look, let's talk a bit about the plot. Let's sort of describe it. It's this weird, like the first game, it's a sort of a weird hybrid of Discworld stories, like existing stories from the novels, Frankenstein together into something new and different that feels a little bit different to the tone of the books and a little bit strange maybe. But this one is largely based on Reaper Man with liberal amounts of Mort and a little bit of pyramids and a little bit of moving pictures all kind of sprinkled in there as flavor, I guess.
Bit of Last Continent as well, like a tiny amount.
Yes, that's true. And it was kind of published around that time. So this is from 1996. And I think the thing that I'd forgotten and that boggled my mind, having worked in video games a little bit, is how quickly after the first one this came out. Like it came out the following year.
Yeah, that was a question I had. Like, would they have been already working on that, or was it the first one was successful and then they're just like everyone's pulling 24-hour shifts, everyone's doing this? Like, how do you make a game that quickly?
Yeah, well, I think it would have to be a bit of both. I mean, they reused the same engine from the first one, so they'd made this thing called the Tinsel engine, which was their version of an adventure game engine. So they didn't have to write a lot of the basic code that would make the game go. They just had to like redesign what all the scenes would look like and the animation. And I say just, they obviously changed it quite a bit because we have a very different animation style here and a few of the things in the game work a little bit differently. But yeah, I think they must have started pretty soon on the heels of the first one because they worked on the first one for at least 2 or 3 years.
I did like that they referred to insane object puzzles early on. Like they do take swings at their previous one quite a lot, which is great. I mean, saying up top, I have played neither of them. I watched someone competent speedrun both of them. And it emphasized to me that if I were to play this game, it would just be months of my life being like a trial and error, trying to figure things out, and then just like pulling my hair out, trying to figure out how things merge. Why am I shouting in a chimney? Like, it's just all sorts of,
Yeah, it made me reflect too on the speed at which we expect ourselves to go through games now, because there's so much access and so many games being made that it's almost like you feel like you're missing out if you're not getting through things quickly. And especially if sometimes I review on YouTube, you're like, you want to get it done as reasonably quick as you can. But for these, like, when I was playing them, it was, you take your time. Mum comes in and says you've spent too much time on the computer, you need to go outside. And then, maybe a few weeks later you pick it up again. Then you get your family involved. So we weren't trying to speed run these things. It was something you meditated and thought on for a while.
Yeah, and as we discussed in the last episode, it's also kind of communal. Like you'd talk about it with your friends who were also playing it. Maybe they were playing it with you in front of the computer together, or maybe they were playing it separately and you talk about it in the playground or whatever with other people, which is one of the great things about games. They're so communal in that way, in that your experience of the game will be different to my experience of the game. So when we come to talk about it, it's not just talking about the same text or the same film, which, you still have a different experience of those things. But literally different things may have happened in your playthrough of the game to mine, because you might have found some secret thing that I didn't know about, or had some conversation with someone that I totally skipped. This kind of era of adventure games, it's a little harder for that. Like they had to specifically put those things in because they didn't put much content in that wasn't kind of required. There's a little bit of extra stuff. And of course, there's like at least 2 or 3 conversation options for every character, and you don't need to say all of them. But you would see most of the same stuff, but you would do it in a different order and you'd get stuck on different puzzles. And yeah, it's just a fun kind of experience to talk to someone else about how it went for them.
So with you having played the games, roughly in a percentage-wise, do you think, how many characters are just there as red herrings or for atmosphere, like you can have conversations but they don't impact the game? How many objects are things that you pick up and not be able to use?
I think on the objects, it's 0. I think there's nothing in the game that you'd never use. It's interesting, though, that one of the things I noticed about this game, there were quite a lot of objects that you used repeatedly. And then there were quite a lot, but there were still most of them you would only use for one puzzle. And some of them you would use it and it would be used up. And other ones, it would sit around in your inventory for ages until you figured out why you needed this random bit of crap that you picked up off the ground.
So if you see it, you should take it, is the advice.
Oh, yeah, that's very much the adventure game protagonist 100%. Mentality. Yeah, pick up everything, try and glue everything to everything else. Yeah.
The one thing that really I loved about this is that you had the perfect mechanic for having a bottomless inventory in the form of the luggage. It's just, it's like you don't have to come up with a construction for it. You just stick the librarian in there and it's fine.
Yeah.
That stuck with me too. I was like, wait, you can put him in there? That's crazy. And
and he doesn't say anything about it. When you put, there's another, who's the other character? You put the suffragette in there later on. And the babe. Oh, that's true. Well, though the babe is quite clearly like if you look at it, it's a representation. There's those things. It's kind of like in the first game, there's some things where you learn a skill and then that becomes an icon in your inventory, but it's not a thing. It's like just representative. And if you looked at those things, there were some of those where he says, that's for telling Dibbler that I've found the band or whatever. But yeah, when you put the suffragette in there, he says something about her, like, oh, apparently she's okay in there. You can live in there. And I'm like, you didn't say anything about that for the librarian. You just chucked him in there.
Yeah, but we know the librarian lives between space and time anyway, so that he would be fine.
He's all over it. But look, let's talk about the plot. The other thing I really noticed about this game, more so than the first one, it's got a lot of extended, like, sort of sequences where you don't do anything, which we would call cutscenes now, but they're pretty much, some of them are kind of cutscenes where it's clearly an animation. It's not in engine, so as we would say, i.e. it doesn't happen in the same mechanisms that you use when you're actually playing. It's just a movie, basically. And there's a reasonably long one. Well, there's 2 or 3 reasonably long ones at the start, but there's a lot of that in this game. There's quite a bit where you just sort of get into a sequence and some stuff happens and you just sit back and watch the result of whatever nonsense you've been doing.
But at least you're not just going up and down stairs for like 15,000 years.
It does feel like that in some of these games, though. And I think if you're trying to solve the puzzles yourself, yes, you definitely sometimes feel that. It starts with this sort of interesting prelude sequence where Rincewind and the librarian have clearly been out on the terps and they're on their way back to the library, like all good sort of university staff after a long day, I guess. And I can say that I work at a tertiary institution. And they just happen to be walking past the Fool's Guild, specifically the donkey cart park of the Fool's Guild. And they spot a bomb, a magical explosive device. And Rincewind decides in an uncharacteristic act of bravery, he's just I'm going to defuse that because he knows he's in a game. So he's like, they can't kill us yet. It's the start of the game. Like a really early opening gambit of, I know I'm in a video game. So he tries to defuse it. He fails. It goes off. He and the librarian and a cat escape, but the explosion destroys the Fool's Guild and knocks Death, who is flying overhead, off Binky.
Who is very, very cute.
Yeah, Binky's great in this game.
Yeah.
What a beautiful animation of a horse. What do we think about this prelude, though? Like, as someone who kind of knew this game but didn't play the sequel, I kind of vaguely knew what the plot was about, but I was not prepared for this intro. It really kind of threw me a little bit.
I was like, I'm in for a good time. Like, I'm like, it's going to be fun to watch someone else play this game.
Yeah.
It's not a very gamey intro. Like, you kind of feel like you've started watching a really fun cartoon, because it's all cell animated, right? And, but it's just a banging opening, and I don't mean that just because there's an explosion. I mean, all the meta references, you know, breaking the fourth wall, basically saying, yeah, I'm in a video game. I know I'm not going to die yet. There was a brilliant line, which is from Rincewind, aren't you going to miss all this stuff when they stop making these games? And talking about that idea of having an absurd, off-the-wall, humorous intro. I don't think we have permission to have this kind of offbeat stuff in games, at least not mainstream games anymore. And it was almost prescient to rewatch this going, it's so true.
Yeah, and and there's not that. I mean, there are still adventure games that get made now. They've had a little bit of a renaissance in the last few years, but they're still kind of very much a sort of an indie darling, like people who remember them from the 90s kind of vibe about that industry or that part of, video games. And the modern ones, mostly, unless they're deliberately emulating something like this, or more likely The Secret of Monkey Island being the really famous comedy game, they kind of take themselves, like you say, Kat, like very seriously, like most modern video games do. And I think, I really love it when a game doesn't. I've been playing Abiotic Factor, and I was just thinking about it when you were talking about how we feel like we've got to speed through games to play different things. And I think one of the things I've loved about that game is it's kind of this like weird survival sci-fi horror game, but it's also quite cozy. And I've spent literally, I think I'm nearly up to 300 hours in it, and I haven't finished it yet. Like I'm just tooling around, checking out the place, building things, and it's just a joy to be in it because it also doesn't take itself very seriously. It's a bit silly, and I really like that about it.
Yeah, there's been a few games since. I think comedy games, like genuinely funny comedy games, are rare as hen's teeth. And I mean, I think of The Bard's Tale, which I think is probably one of the funniest video games of all time.
Classic.
But it has this kind of similar, that Monty Python style humor. I just finished playing Outer Worlds 2, which was very funny and really had some good laughs with that. And I mean, you've got things, everyone quotes Disco Elysium as the pinnacle of all things, but there is some of that absurdity, but more in a surrealist way there. I don't know that anyone can quite capture this. This is just delightful rewatching it.
Yeah. And, and it's also an interesting intro because it sort of sets up the plot, but it also kind of doesn't ever pay off. And I think that's something we'll talk about because there's an element of this intro that never really gets resolved or becomes a serious part of the plot. And I got to the end of the game and I was like, wait, did they cut out like an entire plot out of this game? And I know that happens. It happened to the game that I worked on as the head writer. I wrote a lot of stuff and they literally cut like about half of what I wrote of the whole game. And I totally understand why they did it. The game still works. It's fine. But that kind of stuff happens in games where you're like, we just don't have the time or the money to do that much stuff. And maybe it'll be fine if we don't do that. And I'm wondering, I haven't seen any interviews where this has been said, but I wonder if something like that happened with this game. But maybe we'll come back to that when we get towards the end.
I also just wanted to note that in the credits, it had Terry Pratchett credited as throwing objects from afar, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
That's right. Yeah. I laughed at that. But also, are we going to talk about the absolute banger that is the opening credit sequence called That's Death?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Eric Idle, just in his element.
He wrote that song too.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is listed in the credits. I don't know if it was like a condition of him being involved that he got to write his own song and perform it with musicians that he knew in his studio in LA, but that is how it worked. And I think, he dug it. And it is, look, it's a very Eric Idle song, but with sort of bigger band kind of production than a lot of his other stuff. But it's, yeah, I agree. It is pretty great. It's a banger.
Yeah, it kicks off with a lot of bangers, this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a question about that, so we'll come back to that song later. I think it also sets the stage for the rest of the game because it's not a Python song, right? And of course, listener, in case you don't know what we're talking about there, Eric Idle, famously a member of Comedy Troupe. He's a snake. That's right. No, he's a member of the Monty Python, the UK comedy group from the 60s and 70s and into the 80s. They weren't actively producing stuff in the 90s, but people were still very familiar with their work. And certainly people of my generation grew up with their stuff. It was still being played on TV. The films were like cult comedies. And this game, even more so than the first one, which did have a few, has got so many Python references in it. And this song feels like it could be a lost song from a Python film or a TV show because, one of Idle's famous songs is Always Look on the Bright Side of Life from Monty Python's The Life of Brian, which is famously sung by a bunch of people who've been crucified. I mean, they've been tied to the crosses. It's not quite as gruesome as that, but they know they're going to die. So they're singing this very cheery song, whereas this song is quite upbeat, but it's explicitly about, hey, wouldn't it be great to be dead? It's basically the comedic theme here. You don't have to pay tax. You don't have to pay rent. You can just take the day off. It'd be great.
But it's a point that's countered later in the game where they have the meeting of all the undead folks who are complaining about, I can't get a job, I can't pay my rent, it's really rough being dead.
Yeah. but it is a banger of a song, and thematically, at least, it feels good, even if the specifics maybe are counted. And I think that kind of shows it was definitely written by someone just going, "I'll write a funny song about being dead." It doesn't. It's not really about what happens in the game, but it does kind of fit in. Yeah, what an intro. Oh boy.
I'm just looking through some of my notes because I was watching it and just keeping some key points, and it's just stuff like croquet sticks, Dibbler looks like Friar, petticoat, Chucky, 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 and why are we feeding a rooster soup?
Yeah. I mean, look, without context, it all sounds ludicrous. Doesn't
and
it?
In context, it's still ludicrous.
Well, let's give it some context so it could be properly ludicrous. Because as the plot kicks off, we go to Unseen University. Rincewind is not there. We've had the prelude. The wizards, the faculty, are throwing a death party for Windle Poons because it's time for him to die. And as we know from the books, but isn't fully explained in the game, wizards know when they're going to die. I think they might mention it, but they don't go into a lot of detail. So they're throwing this party, and Windle Poons does die, technically, but he doesn't go anywhere. He just sits there.
His soul isn't severed. You see it come out, but then it's tied, and then he's just kind of like still there.
Got that silver thread.
And he also looks quite young. Like, he looks surprisingly young to me. I thought he looked, like, in my brain, he was a lot more wizened.
Well, he looks quite different to in the first game. That's one of the interesting things is you see with the wizards the very definite stylistic choice they've made for this game, which is to go in a very different direction. The first game has that delightful kind of old school, early to mid 90s pixel art where we don't have that many pixels, but we're going to make the most of the ones we've got. Whereas this one, like you say, Kat, it's like a cell animation. It looks like a Don Bluth film, like something like An American Tale or something like that. Or it reminded me of, also by Don Bluth, the video games like Dragon's Lair, that kind of a thing. Although not nearly as smooth an animation because it's, made for PCs in 1996.
It reminded me of that switch in King's Quest as well, but I think it's between King's Quest 5 and 6.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and the one about the princesses and the queen and the princess, and I loved all of these games, was in that cell-style animation after being more 2D point-and-click adventures for a very long time.
Yeah. It came out, this game, in a very transitional period for video game graphics. Like, PCs were getting more powerful. They were starting to supplant, like, the Amiga and the Amstrad in the home for doing more powerful stuff because they weren't keeping up. And we saw the shift from the sort of simple pixel graphics to this kind of full-on animation, which didn't quite take off before 3D started to come in. And we saw things like The Seventh Guest, which came out before this, and Myst and things like that. And then we saw that in adventure games because not long after this, we got Grim Fandango and the fourth Monkey Island game. But the third Monkey Island game was the same. It was this kind of cell animation style, which was very different to the first couple. So you don't see too many of those games have enough games in a series to show that off. You got like the Sierra ones, the LucasArts ones, and this, and that's kind of it. Like, not many of them had that many sequels, unless it's like a weird European game like Goblins or something like that.
There's actually a game I'm interested in checking out. I think it's called By Sweet Carol, and it's a recent release that has this kind of style of animation. And that's one of the reasons I was quite attracted to it, because I was like, oh, this is cool, a bit of a blast from the past.
I remember there was another one. It kind of didn't have this style of animation, but it was sort of trying to emulate it, which was one of those like human being gets stuck in cartoon world games. I think it was called Toonstruck, and it had Christopher Lloyd as the human character, which is an interesting kind of thing as he was in, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I thought, that's a bit of stunt casting, isn't it? But I remember that. I did play that, and I remember that being quite interesting, but it didn't quite have this style of animation. But yeah, the wizards are all very colorful. That's the other thing about this game. They've really gone like Technicolor in the palette, right? It's really, I posted a picture of it in our call out for questions, and someone commented, I think it was on Instagram, until I checked the caption, I thought this was a steal from He-Man. And I was like, yeah, I can see why you would think that.
It is very colorful.
It's all purples and greens and weird shapes. Yeah.
But I kind of like that because I don't imagine Discworld being dull. I mean, the River Ankh is dull, but, it would be a particularly bright shade of putrid, right?
Now that's got to go on a T-shirt. That's gold.
Come to Ankh-Morpork, a bright shade of putrid.
That's great. If we make those T-shirts, we'll send you one. That's incredible.
Yeah, I want one.
I
will wear it with pride.
Liz has a long-running obsession with the Riverrank, so I think you would have been particularly pleased with some of the sequences in this game. But look, let's...
Oh, yeah.
I don't want us to forget the plot, because I know that, listener, you may not have played this game or watched a run-through before you listen to this. So we've had the death day. Windle has come out of his body, his soul on the silver thread. They use this in this game. It'll be interesting in our next episode when we're going to read a book that will explain some kinds of these things. We'll talk more about that at the end, where that comes from, because I've actually never seen it except in games. That kind of idea that when your soul comes out of your body, it's joined to your body by a silver thread. It's a thing used in Dungeons and Dragons as well. When you go to the astral plane, when your spiritual form leaves your body, you are connected back to your body by a silver thread. And if someone should come along with a silver sword and cut it, you'll be lost in the astral plane forever. And that, I think, is a really interesting little detail, which I quite enjoyed, that I wonder how many people playing this game today would clock, because it's not really explained. It's just given as read that you will know what that is.
See, I didn't even clock that. But in any way, I was just kind of like, well, death has a scythe, so you got to be connected and the scythe has to do something.
Makes sense. I don't know if that's how it's described in the books, though. I think he usually sweeps the scythe through someone's body and then their spirit steps out of it. Or it's not described in that much detail usually. It's more like there was the swish of a scythe, that kind of thing. But anyway, Windle argues with them, decides he's not going to stick around here being not dead, and leaves to try and find himself either a grave or a way to get into the afterlife.
Rincewind then emerges from a pudding.
Yeah. He had a really good night with the librarian, clearly. He didn't know where he ended up the next day. And the Archchancellor summons him because he's like, look, this is not the only time this has happened. Death seems to be not on the job. We need to find out what's going on. So as Rincewind predicts, he says, I've got a quest for you. Go and get the required items to perform the rite of Archchancellor. Although, as they say it in this, they say it's Archchancellor. Which is, to be fair, is how it is spelled in the books. So I wasn't ready for that, but I liked that.
I just love the fact that a recurring theme through this game is Rincewind's complaints about side quests and fetch quests, which, again, so prescient, this game, where he's just like, oh, it's not going to be that easy. Clearly, it's going to be some obscure things that I have to go and collect. And it's just a brilliant piece of fourth wall breakage.
Yeah, I liked it more at the start of the game than by the end, I think. Like, I started to feel like, surely you've got some other jokes. But I did enjoy it. My favorite one is at one point, I think it's one of the puzzles involving Hex. He says something like, oh, I can't believe it's going to be like a Russian doll series of whatever. It's going to take 6 or 7 hours of my life, blah, blah, blah. Apologies to any parents listening with their children in the room, by the way. But yeah, it was there. It was constant. And I enjoyed it at the start, but I did find by the end, I was a bit like, just get on. Like, I get it. I've played these games before, I played more games than you have, Eric Idle.
I did enjoy the one, though, where he's trying to get past the troll with a toothache. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, I'm not doing another quest, so he kind of out-logics this troll into giving him the quest item, which I'm like, I wish I could do that with all my video games.
That would be great, wouldn't it? Yeah. Well, Rincewind, obviously this is Rincewind's quest, and he needs the classic 4 cc's of mouse blood and 3 sticks that are the same length. But then the Archchancellor is also like, oh, yeah, but, for the look of the thing, we also need some glitter dust and a horrible smell and some proper dribbly candles because, we've got to, it's death, we've got to make an effort. It's one of those things that's really interesting to see, like a pretty short gag that Pratchett did like about 4 or 5 times. This is one of those gags describing the Rite of Archchancellor that he iterated various versions of, but it's always quite a short thing. You can just do it like this, but of course no wizard would be caught dead doing it without the dribbly candles and the blah, blah, blah. So I enjoyed the way they translated that into a quest. It kind of just does throw you into that first quest. Unlike in the first game where you have the sort of very short introductory quest of get this book out of the library and you just have one goal and a fairly short, by the game standards at least, sequence of puzzles to solve to get there. In this one, they're like, no, you got to get 5 things. Off you go. And I think they really do assume that you've played the first one, even though there's not really you don't really need to know anything about the first game to play this one.
Yeah, there's no tutorial level for this game.
No.
It's cutscene and go fetch some things.
Go get those things. And there's also, until you get later on to the world map, There's no overhead map where you see Rincewind walking around Ankh-Morpork either. You just you're in the university, you go outside and you're in the university grounds, which is one location with a few sub-locations. And if you go outside the university, there's they love the Dutch angles in this game too. Like they're really, everything's at a wacky kind of tilt. But there's just this sort of painted, here's a part of Ankh-Morpork. And you can see the university in the background. And this part of Ankh-Morpork that you can see in this scene, that's where all the places you can go in Ankh-Morpork are. And it's not, until later that you get the little Monkey Island style tiny animated Rincewind wandering around a top-down map. But I liked that. Gave it a real style, I thought.
I could read you some more of my notes from this section of the game, if you like. So I've got love the old shop woman, Granny Weatherwax and Ankh-Morpork, ?
Yep.
Haunted brick, how to know where to take ghost and put in stone. He seems happy. And then bellows for Marilyn. Like, how do you sort of go, I'm going to have to get underneath this grate and start honking some bellows up at this Marilyn Monroe stand-in to gather something.
That was one piece of logic where I was rewatching it going, geez, how did I figure that out? Maybe it was just one of those eternal point-and-click adventure problems that you can always solve it if you're willing to click enough times.
Yeah, you just click everything on everything else. I think one of the things about this game is it's kind of like when people talk about OSR role-playing games, right? I know you know what I'm talking about, Cap. For listener, if you don't know what I'm talking about, in role-playing games, there are many different traditions of how to play. In the last probably 20 years or so, one of them has been called the Old School Revival or Old School Renaissance, OSR, where people go back to playing games in what they think is more like the way they were played when Dungeons & Dragons was first invented in the 70s. In a lot of role-playing games, you play a character, and the things that the character is good at is kind of what's important. Like, does my character understand how to do this? Are they good at picking a lock? Are they good at investigating a thing? Do they have, in Call of Cthulhu, the spot, was it spot hidden skill?
Spot hidden. Oh, that most essential skill.
Yeah, like you need to, like there could be horrible monsters hiding in a bookshelf. You need to be able to see that they're there.
Or not.
Or not, exactly. And you roll dice to see if your character can do things. And that's a big part of role-playing. One of the things about the OSR tradition that most people agree on is that it's about player skill more than character skill. So it's not what can your character do according to the rules of the game, but what do you do as a player? And I think that this game has a little touch of that where there's a lot of puzzles where I don't think Rincewind would ever figure out what to do. But me, as a human being from Round World in the year 2026, or indeed, 30 years ago in 1996, I've seen that classic shot of Marilyn Monroe where she's standing on a grate and air blows her dress up in the air. And I know that's what's supposed to happen. I don't necessarily know how it's going to help me. Although I will say that is one of the puzzles where a big difference in this game from the previous one manifests itself in that there's quite a lot of hints in this game. Rincewind, as well as the standard kind of different things he can say when he's speaking to someone, there's these three little icons. So one is just a smiley mouth, which is like, hello. One is like a Jack in the Box, which is like, I'm going to crack some wisecracks.
Sarcasm.
Yes, sarcasm. And then there's the question mark, which I'm going to ask a serious question. And then sometimes there's another icon for like a specific item or place or thing or concepts that you want to ask that person about. But then this game introduces another one, which is a little thought balloon with a candle in it. I never really quite clocked why it was a candle in the thought balloon. But when you click on that, Rincewind sort of talks to himself or sometimes quite explicitly to you, the player, and says some things to himself. And sometimes that's just like an extra opportunity for a gag. But quite often he says something that sort of puts two and two together for you in case you're struggling.
I think, is it because it's not a light bulb, but it's a candle in...
Oh, okay.
That was what I was going to say, yeah.
Now you're talking. I'll have to... you know
I
what?
think that's quorum. That must be it.
I think you're right. I think, you know what? I think I need to find... I'll find a copy of the manual for this game because now you've made me think maybe it is explicitly the hint button. I don't know. But a lot of the time it's not a hint. It's just another gag. But in that case, when he's talking to her, the fact that her dress is quite glittery is mentioned multiple times. And if you get him to do that, he sort of looks at you and goes, it's a very glittery dress. Do you get it? Like he says something along those lines. So I think you've got to do something with the dress. And then as a human being who lives in a world where Marilyn Monroe really existed, you know what's supposed to happen. And so you go and do that. And I think there are multiple puzzles in the game that kind of work on that kind of logic where it's not what the character would know or do. It's what you as a human being who lives in a world full of pop culture expects to happen or thinks could happen because of what you've already experienced.
All right. This note, I think, is a question for both of you. It says, Bee's clicky pamphlet, and then is there only one way to achieve a goal, or are there a few? Are there different ways to solve something, or is it just one path to how to do it?
Like a lot of adventure games, it was pretty rare for there to be multiple solutions to the same puzzle. Sometimes you could do things in slightly different order. And indeed, in this game, it's quite flexible. Like in the first one, it's very open world for an adventure game. Like you're not locked down to only a few locations for most of the time. This first quest, you can only go around Ankh-Morpork, but it's not long in the game before you can leave Ankh-Morpork and go to other places. And you do unlock new locations by talking to people and finding out that they exist, much as you did in the first one. But otherwise, you can kind of go anywhere and do anything as long as you've got the stuff to do it with. And there's stuff that you can collect quite early on in the game if you want to. You won't use it to solve a puzzle until much, much, much later, but it will be the only way to solve that puzzle. So if you didn't pick it up early in the game, you're just going to have to go back and find it and get it, which is another reason why you pick up everything as soon as you can, because you don't want to have to go hunting for that one object you need if you didn't pick it up, 4 hours of gameplay ago, and now you can't remember what's in that location you haven't been to for that long. So yeah, I don't think in this game there are. Some games do have multiple solutions. It's pretty rare in adventure games.
I actually, this is one of the biggest influences on me as a game writer is actually Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. And for that very reason, what was so striking about that at the time is because it determines what kind of player you are at the start of the game and then gives you 3 different versions of the game that kind of come to the same ending. But it was such an early version of that kind of branching narratives, or we're going to take your game style and tailor the game to how you like to play games. So there's not that here. And I think it's probably a little bit like there's so many objects and it's probably quite complex, I think, in the sense that there's a lot of that weird lateral thinking already required, which Rincewind mocks at some point. That, yeah, I think you would be adding too much complexity to the game to kind of add additional solutions to these already slightly off-wall solutions. Would a branching narrative address more sensible solutions? And would that really be keeping in with the manner of the Discworld?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about this, and I think, another example is the croquet mallets. And listener, in case you hadn't clocked this, we will be spoiling some, but definitely not all of the puzzles. So you can still play this game, but we will be talking about the puzzles and some of their solutions. But the way you collect the croquet mallets is by substituting dead animals, basically, or stunned animals in a couple of cases for them. And I think the only reason you really know how to do that is because one of them's a flamingo. And if you have read or seen the film of Alice in Wonderland, then you have seen people using flamingos as croquet mallets. And I think that's the only reason why you would do that. There's not a lot of hints in the game that is how you should do it. But even there, you have to give the specific animal to the specific wizard or librarian who's playing the game. And if you try and give them to the wrong one, and again, this is an improvement on the previous game. We talked about in the first one how you heard Eric Idle say, that doesn't work about 4 billion times. In this game, they fixed that. So if you do something that's not right, he says something that's more contextually appropriate. And sometimes that gives you a hint as to what the right thing is to do. And sometimes it's just specifically telling you what's wrong. So if you try and give the flamingo, for example, to the librarian, which is the wrong bird for him, he says, no, that's not the right one for him, or something along those lines. So you know that you're thinking the right way about solving the puzzle. You just haven't got the specific solution that the game expects you to have, which is, again, another sign that, no, there's only one way to do each one. But Rincewind does manage to collect all the things for the right of Archchancellor. I should say it properly now that we've heard it pronounced. And just for this bit, I think you talked about the shopkeeper. There is a wandering shop in this game, as featured in a few of the Discworld novels. My favorite thing about it is that you see it disappear and reappear in other parts of the city, and every time it does it, it makes the TARDIS dematerialization noise, which of course made me very, very happy.
Yeah, take a drink, everyone.
Yeah, and I love that it does it if you just it just happens periodically when you're looking at the map of Ankh-Morpork, but also when you're inside the shop, every now and then the woman who's in there, she's asleep, and then she wakes up, she turns around, she pulls a big lever on a like very sci-fi looking device behind her, and you hear the noise briefly. And when you go out of the shop, it's in a different place. And I just thought there's some really lovely attention to detail in this game, just little things like that I really enjoyed.
One of the things that has stuck in my memory for 30 years from this first section of the game is actually just the depiction of foul Ron. And it is just etched in my memory. There's a few things from this game that are etched in my memory, and that's one of them. And seeing that again with a big foul stench above the body, I still think when I smell something putrid, I'm like, a foul old Ron with his big green miasma. It just, I don't know. It made me happy to see it again.
And just the way that it kind of has that suggestive shape of maybe a face in profile, maybe just a giant nose. It's not 100% clear.
And I'm not sure if I heard this right when I watched it, but like later in the game when they're watching a film, I think he's there and he's like, my smell would like this, or I wish my smell could have seen this.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. This is great. That's something else about this game, that all the characters that you meet turn up in all the crowd scenes. It's not just generic people. It's like characters that you've already seen in some other way, that you really reuse those character designs rather than just doing some generic people. And I thought that was really cool.
One's supposed to be Terry Pratchett, isn't it? Like I read that in the last crowd scene that they like drew in Terry Pratchett, and I looked carefully, and there's one who could be, but it's not in a way that I would look at it without having been told that in advance and be keeping an eye out. So I don't know how true that is.
I didn't spot him in this one. He's definitely in the first game. He's in a crowd scene in the first game. I don't remember if he was in this one. I didn't notice him.
Yeah, so I could be wrong, but we'll find out.
I was going to move us on to the next part of the plot, but one thing we haven't talked about yet is the voice cast for this game, which is it's a little bit like I was, for some reason it reminded me of when they made the TV version of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because you had about half of the cast from the radio series went on to do the TV show, but then they recast some of the roles because, some of them were like, you don't really look like the character. And in a similar way, we've got Eric Idle playing Rincewind again. And we have Rob Brydon and Kate Robbins doing supporting voices, but we don't have John Pertwee because unfortunately John Pertwee died early in 1996. I went to school wearing a black armband. I was very sad when that happened. We also don't have Tony Robinson, presumably just because he was busy. I can't see why he would say no. He was still doing the audiobooks at that stage. But instead of Tony Robinson and John Pertwee, they just have one new actor, and that one new actor is Nigel Planer, who listeners may well know from reading the unabridged or the original editions of the unabridged audiobooks for ISIS Books, right up until, I forget which one was the last one he did. Might have been, I think it was around Monstrous Regiment, somewhere around there when Stephen Briggs took over. But he was known for doing that, and of course, very well known as Neil in The Young Ones. So we've got this sort of comedy royalty of British television in many ways. Rob Brydon wasn't as famous back then as he is now, but, he was still a well-known voice. He'd been in some things, and certainly not outside of the UK. I think he was better known in the UK than he was here in the 90s. Still a great cast. And I remember when I heard, because I didn't know about the audiobooks back in the 90s. I wasn't listening to audiobooks then, but I remember hearing that Nigel Planer was in it and just thinking, that's awesome, because I was a big Young Ones fan.
Yeah, I grew up watching The Young Ones, and now that you said it is Nigel, I'm going to listen with a more careful ear because that's brilliant. But it's so funny because Eric Idle for me is Rincewind. I have that Eric Idle voice in my head when I read Rincewind's dialogue. I feel like it's this perfect kind of combination of cynical, snarky, absolutely cowardly. It just for me is Rincewind in my head. But I don't know if you guys find that too.
I don't. And I think that's because while I did play the first one, I only played it once or twice. Because I had a real copy of it, but for some reason, I don't know why I didn't play it more often than that. I think I find this version of the character a little too far removed from the book Rincewind. There's definitely some similarities there, but it's kind of like an adaptation of Sherlock Holmes. Like they've really picked the elements of the character that they like and that suit the thing they're trying to do, and they've dialed those up to maximum. So we've got his genre sort of awareness, which is now tuned up to the point, not just where he understands the kind of story he's part of, but that he knows literally what medium he is involved in. Because Rincewind in the books never goes, oh, I can't believe they're going to turn the page and I'm going to get eaten by a dragon. He does say things like, this is the kind of thing that always happens to me. If I don't volunteer, I'm going to wake up finding myself on the voyage anyway. Like he knows the story, but he knows it in a Discworld kind of way that makes sense. Whereas here, he just knows he's in a video game, and he talks directly to the player, and he talks about the conventions of video games, and one or two other characters are in on it too. That I find I enjoy it. I think it's fun. It's not the book Rincewind for me. So no, I don't see his voice as a definitive Rincewind. And I don't actually think I have one, because I don't find any of the versions that we've seen in other media to be quite how I imagine the book character.
And for me, we're getting into complex, like, how does your brain work territory. But for one thing, I have only experienced these games recently for these episodes, so I wouldn't have had it as early. So I was reading Rincewind without this in there. I think Eric Idle does an excellent job of it, and his version of Rincewind is one I thoroughly enjoy. But I don't think I have a definitive one, because of just the way that books play out in my mind. They have their own sort of thing. Even if like whatever I read has a movie adaptation or a television adaptation that I think is perfect. Like, I think David Suchet does the perfect Hercule Poirot, and I have watched pretty much all of them. But if I'm reading reading a Poirot book, he's not what I picture or hear. There's a different one.
Yeah, and I mean, like you say, that's complex. How does my brain work territory? And I've come to realize that I have, like a huge cinematic film playing in my head whenever I read or kind of consume something, and then not everyone has that, and it's all just everyone's different ways of thinking.
Yeah.
But it would be brilliant to see that. Like, I'd just love to just take little holidays in everyone's brain to be like, this is what this looks like. Amazing.
Yeah.
Or more like, what's happening?
It's a million different adaptations. Yeah. What's interesting to me about it is that there is sort of this very universal idea for a lot of readers of what the characters look like because of the pervasiveness, particularly of Paul Kidby's official illustrations. And I think a lot of people sort of think, well, they'd look a bit like that. But I also don't think that when people imagine it in their heads, if they do have that kind of visualization of a novel, that they literally see those characters, because they're clearly caricatures and they wouldn't be real people, and you wouldn't animate them that way either. So I think they probably see something a little bit different in their heads too. And that's why I love stuff like this, where we get to see another take on all the characters, even if I am like, that's not how I imagine Rincewind in the books looking or talking. I mean, I think the wizard's robes are really an interesting choice in this game too, because they're so fuzzy. They look like bathrobes.
They do.
With terry toweling robes.
Or like some kind of fur gown, maybe. I don't know. They've all got like, trim on the ends. They're all wearing different, really bright colors with a different pattern on them. The students in the high energy magic building particularly are crazy in their coloring scheme, which I kind of love. I think it really works for this game. That's not how I imagine them looking at all, but I think it really works for this. Yeah. And I'm speaking of Nigel Planer. One of the students, Mad Drongo, who's sitting on top of the Thorm accelerator in the high energy magic building scene, sounds exactly like Neil from The Young Ones. Like he's just gone, a student who's like a hippie. Yeah, I can do that. Like, I've done that before. I'm kind of famous for it. So that was a joy. There's a lot of interesting choices with the voice cast in the way that they do different voices. There's a lot of accents, not all of which I think would fly in a game made in 2026. And then there are some that are fine, but in weird choices, like Skaz, who's the high energy magic building person who's in charge of the Hex project. Sounds like George Harrison, having a downer. Like he's just really I don't know, man. He's very Liverpudlian but slow.
Repeatedly through this, I kept getting flashes of the birds who are the beetles from Jungle Book. Like, they have that later when they're like with the skeletons and the ones that you have to like put an arm into a saddlebag to get rid of or whatever. Yeah, so they're like, but also the university student, he sounded like one of those birds. And also they've got the hair of their faces. He seems like that, maybe.
Oh, it's fishing from the same stream, as Pratchett would say. They're both going, well, let's do a beetle. Why not?
The accents are interesting, like you say. Like Gimlet is Italian for some reason. The dwarf.
Yeah, and then some of the other dwarfs are too, because Gimlet is.
Yeah, but one of them is Welsh as well.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, one of them is Welsh.
Yeah.
There were a lot of Welsh characters in the first game, I think because Rob Brydon is Welsh and is quite proud of being Welsh, so he did a lot of Welsh voices. And then so is John Pertwee, so he did some of the voices Welsh as well. And then in this game, yeah, not very many Welsh characters. One of the challenges, though, is like in a scene like that in the High Energy Magic building, you've got 3 characters. They're all in the same room. You're going to hear them in rapid succession. There's only 2 supporting male voice actors. So 2 of them are going to be voiced by the same person. So they really had to sort of, and they don't always do accents. This is something that, talking about tabletop role-playing a lot today, but it's something that, you know, is advice for GMs, that you don't have to do an accent to do a different voice for a different character, right? And I think this game does have a lot of accents, but it also has a lot of good voice acting that's just, I'm going to do a different voice and it's pitching my voice down or speaking with a particular cadence or that kind of stuff, which I enjoyed. But let's get through to Act 2. Each of these acts has a title, by the way. So Act 1 is The Right Stuff. Right being, you know, of course, R-I-T-E. And they do the rite of Archchancellor, and Death does show up, although they get kind of sidetracked halfway through the thing and they start singing a version of the Banana Boat song.
Yes, the Beetlejuice scene, basically.
Yeah. There's a lot of movie references in this game.
There's a lot of movie references. There's so many. And movie making becomes a big part of the plot.
Which makes sense why they would do it, I suppose. But yeah, they think it hasn't worked, and then they realize Death has appeared, but he's drunk and hanging on the chandelier and wearing a hat with corks on it.
Where's that from? I don't know where people wear hats with corks on them.
Yeah, the souvenir shop.
And they're like, man, you got to get back to work. And he's like, no, I don't remember anything. There was a big bang and now just lots of beers. And he says at one point, my favorite line, he's like, I'm supposed to have a chunder in a minute. And they're like, what's a chunder? And it's great because there's like some Australian jokes that I don't think are in the last continent. They're different Australian jokes. And most of them are all right. There's a couple where you're like, I don't know about this. But he just likes where he is. He doesn't really remember anything about going to work. And he disappears. And the Archchancellor is like, right, Rincewind, I've got another job. And Rincewind's like, oh no, here we go again. He's like, I've got another job for you. You got to find out where he is and get him to go back to work. And that starts Act 2, Come Die With Me, which is the major part of the game, is figuring out where Death is and how you're going to convince him to go back to work. And you fairly quickly figure out that Death is in 4X. You figure out how to get onto a ship and go there. And Death is like, I don't want to go back to that job. Everybody hated me. No one appreciated the work that I did. And he's like, what if I made you popular and famous? Would you go back to work then? And he's like, yeah, I would. And so he goes, what if we made a film? We'll make you a film. I'll make a film about you. We'll make you a star. And then you can go back to work. And then that is the major quest for this act, which is get all the things you need to make a fantastic clicky, as they call them, about Death. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the way that they didn't just go, oh, Death's not doing his job, so nobody's dying, and then sort of just leave that as a background detail. They kind of work it into the plot, only in a couple of places. But the fact that there's this dead collector, again, a Monty Python reference, voiced by Nigel Planer, who kind of explains to Rincewind what's going on, which is that normally he'd just collect the bodies and dump them in a pit. But now that people are dying and they're not really leaving their bodies, they're still here, they don't want to get on a cart and go in a pit. Again, very Monty Python. So he's like, we've started doing package holidays for them instead, leading to a situation where Rincewind has to prove that he's dead in order to get on the ship and go to 4X. So it's stuff like that where I think some of it feels very Discworld logic-y and I kind of enjoy it. Yeah, it was fun.
That whole bit where he has to prove that he's dead, and while he's talking to the inspector at the same time going, oh, great, so I'm dead now? And it's like, oh, yes, you passed the test sort of thing. It's like, great to see someone in this, and he's actually engaging and excited that he's chatting to him while he's dead.
It makes sense to me. Like, I think people in Ankh-Morpork, how we know them anyway, they would definitely adapt very quickly to this situation. It's like, dead people walking around, we can deal with that.
Yeah.
But there's all sorts of stuff you discover in this. Like you go down into a mortuary in the Shades, and Granny Weatherwax is there with her I ain't dead sign on, and there's a mortician like trying to figure out, is she dead or not? And you're
but
like,
when you
what?
click on her, it says witch. It doesn't say Granny, but then they later call her Granny, and it's just, I'm like, just pick one.
Yeah, it was a bit weird because, she's labelled as witch, but when Rincewind describes her, she says, that's Granny Weatherwax, like he knows her. That's a weird detail.
It's also absolutely rampant with great puns, like the carry-on baggage, like the carry-on baggage, very good. And I particularly enjoyed when he's talking to Death, he's like, cross my heart and hope to meet you in a professional capacity. Just beautiful stuff.
Yeah, there's some great gags. I think that is the first and best version of the carry-on pun. They then try and do like 3 or 4 other ones, and it's just like, you already did the best one. Stop it.
Then there's the parrot puns, the parroting and the parodying. But that whole scene actually is another one of the ones that is etched in my mind, the stoning scene. But I think we may talk about that a bit later.
Yeah. So basically, just to give you a bit more detail about how this plot goes, once Rincewind goes to 4X and is like, okay, well, what if I make you a film star? Would you go back to work if everybody loved you? And Death says, yeah, I'll do it. He needs to find the things to make the film a success. And Dibbler is going to make the film for him. He's like, okay, you need these things, right? A gorgeous babe to be in the film, which is how he describes it, right? You need a catchy jingle for the film and a novelty, some sort of gimmick or merchandise that you can sell. That last one is the weakest one of the 3. I'm like, why do you need that? And it's also the simplest puzzle. Like, it's not very difficult to get that one. And I think it's good that there are some puzzles that are a lot easier than others. Like, it means you feel like you've made some progress and you don't give up. I think that was a weakness of the first games. There was very few puzzles that didn't require like 20 steps to get there. And so if you were halfway through all of the puzzles, you felt like, I'm never going to finish this game. Whereas in this one, they do throw you a bone every now and then. Like, here's a real easy one. It's only got like 3 things you got to do. They might be quite obscure, but you only have to do 3 things. You'll be all right. So those are the things that Rincewind goes looking for, mostly around Ankh-Morpork, but also as the game goes on in other places, because once he's on the ship, there's a great sequence where he comes out of the hold and asks if he can have a cup of tea while it's going. And for some reason, the captain hasn't got the memo that the dead people are not really dead. And so he thinks that this is Captain Lavenderbeard come back from Davy Jones's bathroom, I think the joke that he makes, and then gets so scared he jumps overboard. So Rincewind's got the ship to himself and he can just sail it wherever he wants to go. And from that point in the game, you can go to 4X, you can go to Jelly Baby, and there's a couple of locations in the desert around Jelly Baby that you can go to as well. And later on, there's a couple of other places you can go to too.
You can travel like as fast as they did in the final season of Game of Thrones. It's great.
Discworld speedboat.
Yeah. I love the detail of the animation that you get on the boat and the boat sails. You see the luggage get in the sea and swim after you, which I thought was very cute.
The map, interesting also, like with more time, I'd have been like trying to compare it to other things, but my terrible sense of geography is like, oh, that's made up and that's Africa. Like, what?
It is accurate to the map that they use in the books and the map, because that's the Circle C. But usually it would be the other way around. You'd have Ankh-Morpork on the bottom and Clatch and all of the sort of desert countries on what would be oriented on a printed map at the top. But, it's the Discworld. It doesn't really matter which way is up. It only matters which way is hub-wise, which way is rim-wise, which way is turn-wise, which way is Widdershins, which are not marked on the map from memory. But there is a gag when you're in Jelly Baby, you talk to a guy named Yuri Geller.
Oh, yes. Yuri Geller.
Who's bending metal objects.
Yeah, voiced by Nigel Planer, doing like a obsequious little kid kind of voice. He's like, watch me, Ben Spoon. Actually, he sounds a bit like, I was trying to think of who does he sound like. He sounds
Cartman.
He sounds like, what's his name? Eccles or Blue Bottle. I'm going to get them mixed up from the Goon Show is what he sounds like. And he's like, watch me, Ben Spoons with my mind. That's what he sounds like. I've just remembered that now. But, what a wild character. But one of the things he says is like, I've got all the secrets of the Mystic East, which is a direction that does not exist in this plane of existence. And you're like, this is over the top, guys. But
is he the one who's always going, strain?
That's the one. Because he's, Yuri Geller, famous real world supposed psychic who could bend spoons and read minds and convince the CIA or someone that he could do it, and then was...
And restart watches from the TV.
Oh, that's right.
Like you put
he
your
could.
watch over the yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was the big one that got people. And then, of course, was exposed as a fraud, spoiler alert, by the amazing Randy, right?
Yes, there's a really good documentary on that. But actually, that was one of the cultural touchstones I wouldn't have got in 1996. I think I definitely got it now. But I think sometimes that this game was actually used as a point for my dad to explain cultural things to me, like important cultural things and pop culture, because there were things in here that I didn't know in 1996. And I was like, oh, this is funny. And then he'd stop and go, hey, this is from this thing, or this is a send up of this.
96 was still a time when for a lot of people, video games and computer games were for kids, right? They weren't, they never have been, but that's still how a lot more people then thought about it than they do now. And yet, this game was made by people who were adult fans of Terry Pratchett, who were trying to write in the way that he wrote, referencing popular culture that was for adults and also folklore and things that, young kids probably wouldn't know. I mean, Liz and I were big, what was that Time Life book, Mysteries of the Unexplained, that we both had when we were kids. So we knew who Yuri Geller was.
Too.
You did as well?
Oh my gosh. Sidebar, this is my favorite thing to do as a child, was go to the library and hang out in the one section, which is one of the reasons I think I write Call of Cthulhu now, because all that information I gleaned is really helpful for my job.
But yeah, look, there is stuff in this game which is definitely not stuff that kids would get. But I love that for you, that was an opportunity to have those conversations with your dad and learn stuff. That's really awesome.
In the hex scenes, when he's checking the time, is that a tiny Stonehenge clock? Is he using a little Stonehenge? Okay, great. I was like, it looks like that person can. Yeah.
Because that's a joke from the books, where Stonehenge is talked about as if it's a computer and they're updating it to a 33 megalith circle or something like that, which I thought was very funny. And I don't think he says that, but that's where it comes from. And I thought that was great. Yeah, so he has to recruit. The gorgeous babe is going to be the milkmaid. We've already established she's Marilyn Monroe. So who else is it going to be? But she'll only do it if he can get her a diamond. And that's where he has to go on a ridiculous quest that turns into basically a reenactment of the stoning scene from The Life of Brian. And it's so blatant, in fact, that blatant Python reference blinks on and off on the screen, and then it says, apologies to Python Monty Pictures. It's pretty over the top, and there's constant talk about it in the scene. People going, which is where it goes into the parroting thing that you were talking about. It's very silly. And
also the funny thing with that scene is that they've got a woman tied up who's protesting jokes for women.
Yeah, she's a suffragista. She says women should be able to be in the Fool's Guild.
Suffragista. And that's a recurring joke through the whole game. This woman just turns up tied to a pole wherever.
Yeah.
But that was kind of marvelous addition to this actual scene because, the original is with all the women standing around wearing the fake beards, talking in the deep voice, But, they were very clear that it was a parody.
Yes. It's telegraphed as well, because when you first talk to the vendor who sells the rocks, there's a group of women who come and buy the big rock and take it away, which is the one you want to feed to the troll to give him a toothache so you can get his diamond tooth and give it to the... This is what I mean. When you say these things out loud, it seems logical, but how you figure out the step one at a time when you're in it, what the hell is going on? But, again, I think they all make a kind of sense. That is the most blatant Monty Python reference, but it's far from the only one. There are many, many. And also jokes about Eric Idle being in it. When you have to find a band to sing the theme song for the film, you just find the band from the intro sequence tied to some trees on a hill like they're in Life of Brian, and you just cut them free. And one of the lead singer is called Bone Idle, and Rincewind says, I don't appreciate that. And you're like, what are you... Do you know that it's
just
not
beautiful?
Yeah, it's great. Well, I guess what I'm saying is the line between Rincewind and Eric Idle is so thin in this game that's probably also a reason why I don't think of this as the definitive Rincewind.
Generous to think that there's a line.
That's fair. That's fair. He's not really doing a voice or a character or anything. He's just doing gags in the position of Rincewind. But, they're fun.
One of the things that did make me laugh is when Rincewind finally delivers the diamond and the response is, oh, it's not like you had to go around the world for this. And you're like, honey.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. the other part of the song, so you like find the band, and that's another one of the easy puzzles, because basically you find the band, as long as you find them, all you got to do is cut them down, and they're like, yeah, we'll be a band. That's it. Like, there's no sequence of events. But then the other half of that is you have to find the actual song that they're going to sing. And the guy who knows how to do it, like, this is another thing. Uri Geller really does some heavy lifting in this game. Like, he gives you the first hint for at least 3 or 4 different puzzles, I think, and also solves parts of them as well. I think maybe they just had a lot of fun doing the voice. I don't know. But he is like, yeah, there's this wise man in the desert, and like, oh, you want a catchy jingle? That's like philosophy, because that gets stuck in your brain as well. It's a bit of a long bow, that joke, but it works. So he goes out to sea, and this is one of the weirder characters in that it is a character who appears in the books. It's St. Ungulant, who sits on a wheel on top of a pole out in the desert having visions, including of his imaginary friend Angus. A regrettable choice by Rob Brydon or whoever was directing him to give this guy a kind of Indian accent, because he kind of looks like, I guess he kind of looks a bit like Dhalsim from the Street Fighter 2 games. I don't know, but with a beard. I was just like, he's meant to be. Anyway, it was a unfortunate choice, but the character is interesting, not least because even though in the books it's St. Ungulant, right? That's his name. He's a saint. Here he's labeled as St. Ungulant, like those are his initials. Like, there's 2 separate letters with a dot after each one. And I'm like, what is going on there? Did someone just misread the book and no one caught that before it went out? I don't know what happened there.
Or it's like we've got St. Ungulant at home and it's this guy.
It's this guy. But yeah, that's a fun quest line as well, where he's like, yeah, I can write you a song. I know what your heart's desire is. I've written it, but I'm not going to give it to you until you help my imaginary friend who's sick of people coming and asking us just why. And which leads to a very blatant Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference, where the only one who can answer this complicated philosophical question is a supercomputer. So you have to fix Hex in order to answer the question, but then it's going to take Hex 2 million years to work it out. And you don't want to wait that long, so you build a pyramid to accelerate time around Hex. Which,
that's ultimate Discworld logic right there.
But they do have that cutscene that explains about pyramids. I was like, why is this here? Like, it's just like a in the middle. They're like, we're just gonna give you some exposition. And I was like, great, it's like a footnote. I love it. And then there's a reason.
That was an interesting choice too. They kept the footnotes, and it's still Rob Brydon doing a kind of David Attenborough kind of voice to read them. But it's just a voice and some captions, usually just over the scene you're in. Occasionally it's like an image of something else. Whereas in the original game, they did that, but then they had this little animation of like Two-Flower pointing at a chalkboard. Like he was the one telling you the footnote information. They just got rid of that for this game. I don't know why they did that.
That's more fun as well. I like that. I'd forgotten.
Maybe they thought it didn't suit the animation style or something. I don't know.
Well, I disagree.
But once you get all the things for the film together, of course, that's not all you've got to do. Death doesn't look right. He's got to look glamorous. And when Rincewind complains that none of her looks look good, she tries various movie references, makes him up to look like, was it this Humphrey Bogart and Groucho Marx, and then basically The Mask from the Jim Carrey movie, The Mask.
That's the final one. But then, like, he's also the Terminator at one point.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
There's a couple of Terminator references in this.
And there's also a couple of Mask references, which is, you know, it feels a bit peak 1990s, doesn't it? Because I remember seeing that at the movies.
Yeah, had that just come out? Did they all go as a group to go watch it? They're like, yes, this is going in the game. We love it.
Yeah, I think it was actually like 4 years before this game came out. So really? I think, but in the 90s, like some films were just so big that everyone was still talking about them 3 or 4 years later. And The Mask was one of those ones. Like it was still showing on TV. People were still talking about it because you still had to go to the cinema or rent a video to see them. There was no streaming in your home. We weren't on to the next thing 2 weeks later. Like films would play in the cinema for months and months and months.
Every 6 months on free-to-air TV. Like it was one of those like Friday night staples.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that's a big part of it. But there's a lot of things like that. Like there's a lot of the film references are relatively recent, but they're not that year. They're like a few years earlier. Like there's a Death Becomes Her, like the name of Death's film. This is actually one of my favorite puns in the game is Death Becomes Himself, which I thought was great. Very funny.
I really do love Death as this disenfranchised actor. Like, he's gone out of this job where nobody appreciates him, and then he goes into this job where nobody appreciates him. And he's it's almost like what's his name? Alan Rickman in Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
This actor who's just Shakespearean actor who's ready to deliver these lines, that are riffed off Hamlet with some tacked on marketing about fashion at the end. And then progressively just gets worse and is just over it.
Yeah. I actually really liked his little speech, and the first delivery of it is great. I think Death is Rob Brydon, but with a vocal effect. And he does a great job, and that speech is I really liked it. And then he has to do it again after he's hit over the head with various things, because that's the state of movie making in the Discworld, is just like spectacle and terrible awfulness.
And then he quits until he can get a stunt double.
Yeah.
I liked when because he did the I'm ready for my close-up now, Mr. Dibbler, which is a Sunset Boulevard reference. And I kind of like that he's like the hideaway starlet who's like no longer appreciated. The glory days are over. Like it's just kind of like a beautiful little thing. I know it's just like a classic reference, but I was like, I like that this is kind of like who he is as well.
Yeah, that was fun.
If I were playing this game for the first time and he's like, I need a stunt double, and Rincewind's like, oh, we need a skeleton stunt double, I'll be like, there's 3 skeletons right there. I'll just be like furiously clicking on them until like, please work.
I was like, why isn't Rincewind just the stunt double?
Yeah, just put him in a skull mask. It'll be fine.
feels like a Rincewind thing to do.
Although he wouldn't do it. I think there's that great line when they start filming the actual film and he's just operating the camera. He's like, oh, great. I just get to sit back and see the result of all my hard work. And then you're like, yeah, okay, that's fair. Because that's one of the longer like animated sequences too, when they actually film the clicky. Sometimes it went in an unexpected direction. Like, a lot of the stuff you're like, okay, I see where you're going with this. We're doing moving pictures. We're doing classic Hollywood references. We're doing silly riffs on that. But then when it's like, how are we going to make Death look good? The makeup girl is like, you got to get me a picture of the elf queen, because like that's glamour. If you want him to look super glamorous, get me a picture of that and I'll know what to make him look like. And so then there's a whole quest line of how are you going to capture a picture of the elf queen? Like, how are you even going to figure? And that was one where I knew where to start because I've read the books. I know Granny Weatherwax knows about elves, but I think if you hadn't read the books, I think you would be like, how am I going to find out about that?
Yeah, that was one of the bits where I was like, my gosh, the logic here. And I'm not sure. I'm like, did I ever finish this game? Is this the point where I tapped out? Because that whole sequence going to Elfland and then is this the bit with, they have to dress as a unicorn?
Yeah.
Yes. And that's when you put the librarian into your luggage.
Yeah, and you have to basically put the librarian on yourself and you have to match about 4 different objects together to make this unicorn costume.
Yep.
And it's like, how did you get from here to here?
It also has the kind of regrettable, perhaps in modern times, well, I won't say perhaps, the regrettable sequence from our perspective of Rincewind making a lot of jokes about the dwarf costume lady because she is a woman, but she's a dwarf, so she's got a beard, and he's not great about it. It's not good. And the gag being, oh my God, she's coming on to me and she's a dwarf with a beard. Yeah, it's not brilliant. But, I think despite a couple of things like that, most of this game holds up pretty well. Like, it's still, the jokes are dated for sure, and the references are all from the 90s or earlier. In some cases, much earlier.
Yeah, trolls prefer blondes.
Yeah,
that's
classic. But most of it holds up pretty well. But, you make the film, get a stunt double, which is one of the obscure
weird
puzzles. Like, if you don't click on the right part of that scene, you will never figure out what's going on. It's crazy. And it's also, like I said before, you can do things in the game before you know why you're doing them. Because I was under a bit of time pressure to finish this, I did use some hints. I followed a bit of a playthrough, but then I realized I was finding it a bit easy anyway. So I started using a thing that we used to have called the Ultimate Hint System, which is a way of giving bit-by-bit hints to the puzzles in adventure games so that you don't spoil yourself. You just get, wherever you've got up to, you can sort of step through the hints until you're like, I just need the next little nudge in the right direction. And I found even that I didn't need for some of the puzzles. Like, I found this so much easier to play, even in a short time frame, possibly because I played a lot of adventure games, so I kind of understand the way the logic works. But I think also because I know a lot of the references I've read all the Discworld books. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. But that was one where I was like, if you didn't click on the right thing in the scene where you find the stunt double, you would just never think to do it and you would never find them. I don't know how you would figure that out. Particularly because it's a wardrobe. You have to open this wardrobe and you find this character in there. I don't know why I'm being cagey about spoilers now, but anyway, you open the wardrobe and there's...
It's a 30-year-old game and you're like...
I'm tiptoeing around it, but you find a black sheep. They refer to them as black sheep. They're just a humanoid skeleton with a ram's head for some reason. There's a pun about it because they go, oh, clearly he died in the wool. That's why he's here. And it's a stupid pun. That's the only justification for them being there. But if you don't open that wardrobe in the scene where you're visiting the Fresh Start Club, you would never find them. And there are multiple other wardrobes in the game where you click on them and you can't open them. Rincewind just says some joke about why he wouldn't open them. And the joke's, it's not even really a joke. He just says, oh, I don't want to know what's in there. And so you might have given up clicking on wardrobes. It's a really weird puzzle. I think they've done it on purpose to be like, no, we want you to be curious and click on it. Because there's lots of things in the game that are labeled that you can click on. And many of them are red herrings, like, the fake candles in Death's Domain, things that you can't pick up that don't do anything. Like there's several things in the wandering shop that you can click on and ask, can I just have that? And she goes, no, it's not for sale. I do like the way it's very direct where you just want to pick something up and someone owns it. Rincewind just says, can I have that? And they just go, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Which is different to most adventure games where you just steal everything that's not bolted down and you don't ever ask anyone for them unless it's a puzzle or how to get it.
'Tis polite.
Yeah. That was a weird one to solve. But that was one where you could do the things you needed to solve that puzzle before you encounter the puzzle. And I had, in fact, gone surfing in 4X and ended up in a cave and taking some photos of some ancient cave drawings of sheep, which is that's really weird for them to decide, yeah, on the Discworld, there's been sheep in 4X for millions of years. I'm like, don't know how I feel. Don't think that's really good. But I did that and I don't know why I need that, but okay. And then that's what I needed it for in a gag that I think is a reference to equity rules around being allowed to be an actor in certain circumstances. That one was quite obscure. I think the way they justified that would only have made sense to a very small proportion of the audience playing the game.
Yeah, and that ties back to my note that is just, OMG, how do you find out about the cave paintings?
Yeah, there is some dialogue about it. Like if you look at the ocean, Rincewind does talk about wanting to surf, but you don't know what you're going to find at the other end. So I don't know, because I did it in the wrong order. I don't know if there's some dialogue that you unlock by having the quest. Maybe you've been in the cave, but you haven't taken the photos. I don't know. But look, anyway, you make the film with the stunt double. It's finished. You show it in Ankh-Morpork. It's awful.
It's so art house. Okay, we can phrase it that way, but that's okay.
Well, I mean, it's a bit art house, but it's also just pretty bad.
It's like that scene in She's All That where they go to the theater.
Okay.
It even kind of looks like that. So I was expecting the audience to kind of be like, okay, but everyone was hating it. And I'm like, okay, fine. That's my whole commentary. I didn't think it was that bad.
The crowd really hates it, though. They're scathing. But Rincewind is in the projection box, and you have a little scene where it's like, I've got to do something about this. What you end up doing is you've still got some spare images of the Elf Queen, and you splice them into the film as a subliminal message because looking at her is hypnotic. Like, as this has been established, if you look at her, her glamour will entrance you. And so he figures, well, maybe that'll make... And it works. It works. Everyone thinks the film, which is exactly the same, except with occasional images of the Elf Queen, they think it's amazing. It makes Death a star. And he does not want to go back to his old job. He wants to keep being a movie star. And so Rincewind will have to do the job of Death instead.
A question from my watching the speed run of it. The splicing, is that something that you do, or is that something that just happens in the cutscene because it wasn't clear from my viewing?
You do it.
So yeah, you figure that out. That's a puzzle as well. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the first time in this part of the game you do it. It does happen again later on, and you don't do that. That's just part of a cutscene. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the longest bit of the game. Then we get into Act 3, the Grim Rincewind, where you have to prove to Albert, it's a great title, that you are fit to take on the role of Death. And this feels more like Mort, although when you go wandering around the garden, you don't meet Isabel, you meet Susan, on the swing in the garden, which I thought was nice. And she's great. She's very sassy. I thought, yeah, this is a pretty good version of Susan. I'm into this. She's younger than she is in the books, but I kind of dug her as a character.
Yeah.
But yeah, you prove yourself by going through a few puzzle trials to Albert. And then eventually, when you've proven yourself and you are now going to be Death, Albert comes to you and says, I've got your first job for you, your first official job as Death. And Rincewind's like, okay, yep. And he says, this is the hourglass. And it's a big fancy one with skulls on it. And this is where there's a cut scene, which this is why I think there's this plotline cut from this game, because there's an extended cut scene with some guy who's clearly some sort of noble. I don't think he's meant to be Lord Vetinari. Doesn't look like him, really. He is wearing a skull cap and he's got a black goatee, but he's wearing like bright purple and he's clearly evil because we find out he's the one who got an assassin to plant a bomb in the Fool's Guild and now wants the same assassin to kill someone who has become too popular. Now, they establish the plot stuff in about 6 lines of dialogue and then proceed to spend about 5 minutes doing a protracted sketch about the guild member saying that we are the knight and what that means. And it's not the best jokes in the thing. I was really willing for that to be over. And I'm particularly pissed off that scene was so long and so unnecessarily long. And then we really don't get any payoff because we never find out who this guy is. We never find out why he wants to blow up the Fool's Guild or why he wants to blow up Death. It's not established at any point. And he succeeds because he sends the assassin to Bonestock, the big concert that Death is giving outside Ankh-Morpork, and blows him up. He gets blown into bits and he's just like all of his bones are like sitting on the stage and he's still talking and he complains to Rincewind about how he just got the hang of being alive and now he's going to die. And Rincewind's like, but you can't die. And he's like, yeah, as you've become more like Death, I've become more mortal. So now I'm going to die and you're going to have to be Death forever. And Rincewind's like, bugger that. I'm going to sort this out, which gives you the impetus for the final act of the game, which is Act 4, Till Death Us Do Part. Which I don't know if that's the original wording or if they changed it to be more dramatic. But anyway, that's the name of the act. So Rincewind's like, right, I'm going to find a way to save you. I don't want to be Death forever. I just thought I was filling in until you came back after you had your little holiday. And this is also quite a short part of the game because basically you have to remember that Uri Geller, like I said, he really helps you out a lot in this game, had mentioned a Fountain of Youth because even though you've wandered around the desert, you can't just stick any old extra sand in a Death hourglass. It's got to be special magic sand. So you've got to go and find the Fountain of Youth and use sand from that.
He's got to have his magic turret.
Magic turret. That's clearly the name of Death's next band. But you're going to need to find it. And when you do that, you nearly finish the game because this is the final act. And when you do it and you put the stuff in the hourglass, Death does come back to life. And there's this, it's labeled gratuitous 3D scene. There's this amazing animation of all of Death's bones like reassembling, but they're all rendered in 3D in shiny metal, and he looks like the Terminator. It's very silly. I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
And he comes back to life just in time to save Rincewind from being blown up. So not only is this guy, who we never find out who it is, killed all of the fools and nearly killed Death, but also Rincewind. We never even find out why, presumably because he's trying to bring Death back, I guess. But Death saves him and blows up the assassin.
With golf.
Yeah, with golf, yeah. Uses his scythe like a golf club. Which is established earlier on because he's got a golf bag in his domain when you're there.
Yeah, and my speedrunner did not collect anything from that golf bag. So I was like, what's that? Okay, right, bye.
Oh, yeah, you can't collect anything. You just look at it and you just go, oh, didn't really think Death was a golf kind of guy, is more or less Rincewind's comment.
Just jumping back to the very long scene that was very, very boring, that paid off to nothing, where he's like, I am the knight. I was spending that whole time being like, is he that vampire, that sad vampire who doesn't like being one and likes to sleep at 8 p.m. the whole time because he has that whole comment about I am the knight, and he's not. And I'm like, why are you bringing these things together that aren't anything?
It's a very weird part of the game. I really don't know what was going on there. Like I say, I think they cut something and it's fine. It's fine. There's just this whole dangling question of who was that guy? What did he want? And look, maybe I missed the part of the game that explains it.
I mean, it smells like Vetinari. It doesn't look... This is peak veterinary behavior, right? I'm going to get rid of death and send an assassin, but it's not as polished, maybe.
Yeah, but I don't think he'd get rid of death. Would he? Unless he thought that was necessary to restore the balance. Do you think?
Would veterinary kill death?
Do you think it is veterinary, or do you think maybe it was meant to be, but it doesn't come across as him?
I think it's not veterinary, but it could be, it doesn't come across as him. Because, to me, that's not veterinary. And also, surely he, has an affinity for death, being a graduate of the Assassin's Guild. He's got a healthy respect for it. Unless he's I hated my time there, so now I'm going to conquer death. Maybe it's a commentary, because, they're attacking the Fool's Guild initially and sort of later on as well. Maybe it's, because this is a comedy game, they're killing humor, and actually humor wins overall, but maybe that's a long bow.
I mean, we do know that veterinary canonically hates mimes, but I don't think he'd destroy the entire Fool's Guild to get rid of them. He does kill a lot of people. And I mean, look, he is a tyrant, but that's going too far for him. I don't think he would do that.
Yeah, I think too he's more surgical in his nature. If he wanted to take out the mimes, he'd take out the mimes, just the mimes, and leave it as a threat for the rest of the fools. He'd just be get in line. None of this mimery around here.
Yeah.
Could it be Death? The I forgot what book he's in, but
Men-at-Arms.
Yeah. Could it be him?
Yeah, I did think of that, but I don't know. I think it's just really unclear, and it's a weird dangly plot thread because they don't explain it. Maybe it is meant to be the game version of veterinary because he's not as clever and urbane in the first game either. He doesn't do anything. You talk to him and he's threatening, he doesn't like you because he doesn't want you to talk about dragons. But then also he doesn't reward you when you get rid of the dragon because you make everyone forget the dragon ever existed. So, he just sort of serves the plot. He's not really a character in the first one. And I think in this one, if that is him, he's kind of doing the same thing.
He's just some guy with a bone to pick.
Have you been saving that one up, Liz?
No, I thought of that about 10 seconds ago, and then I was kind of come on, pausing the conversation, let's say it.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Well, look, we're nearly at the end of the plot. Let's get to the end there so we can get to some listener questions. But there is an epilogue, which is that there's a new film, which you don't really see. They play the same song from the start. So the song That's Death plays twice. It plays at the start and it plays at the end because it has the credits. It's like a James Bond intro sequence.
It plays 3 times.
3 times? Oh, yeah, that's true.
They've got the fake credits in the movie and then they have the real credits. So they're giving you a preview of the credits that are to come. It's amazing.
That's true because it does play within this film. And that film seems to me like it's meant to be like a film version of what Rincewind has just been through with death. It's not really clear. You don't see much. But people hate it. So Rincewind splices the Elf Queen images in again. But this time when they watch her, it summons her out of the screen, and this is a direct reference to moving pictures. A giant woman comes out of the screen, but this time it's the Elf Queen. And she goes on a rampage, grabs the librarian, climbs up the Tower of Art, and this is where our final scene happens. A crowd assembles, because it's Ankh-Morpork, to look up at this spectacle. And Dibbler is there selling animal bladders, so you can buy some and fill them with water. And then really easily trick Granny Weatherwax into letting you steal her broom. Which is...
Yeah, I was insulted by that.
Character assassination of the highest order.
I was you should have just kept calling her witch. Come on.
She could have been some other witch, exactly. Would have been fine.
It was rude.
Was rude.
Which lends credence to the idea that, Guy is veterinary, because if we're being rude to good characters, then sure.
Okay, yeah, could be. But yeah, you defeat the Elf Queen by throwing water balloons in her face, and then she falls off the Tower of Art.
You really piss her off, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although you do throw water from the Fountain of Youth into her face, which seems an odd choice.
Wasteful.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. But yeah, she squashes Windle Poons, who considers being squashed by a giant elf woman to be probably a good way to go. Look, I'm interested to know, as we get to the end here, that joke leads me to ask, Kat, you played this. Did you feel at any point like this was a game written with any consideration that perhaps women might play this game?
Yeah, I did rewatching it. I mean, when I was playing it the first time, these all went over my head, right? And then rewatching it, and I'm like, the way that Casanunda, is it Casanunda? He's looking for a short lady, and then he'll give you his ladder. And it felt like a lot of the women in this game were there to kind of propel the plot forwards, almost as, I won't say objects to be used, but potentially to be interacted with or to kind of facilitate things happening for Rincewind. I mean, look, it's not a game that has the character development of, say, Expedition 33, but it does grate on you a little when you're rewatching this going, yeah, okay, like women actually did play this game, and actually I played this at a time that it would have been influential on my development. Yeah, I kind of take it with a grain of salt because you sometimes put things down to the period, but at the same time, like, you know, this is the period of games with great women representation. So I don't think there's actually an excuse for it.
Mm. And it's interesting too, because in the interview that Jodie, our guest, found from around the time of the development of the first game, Pratchett explicitly talks about how he wasn't into adventure games. That was Rihanna's bag. And he used to bring them home for her when he went to the States. And did you think about her playing this? And maybe he did, and he was like, it was 1996, nobody really thought about it that much. I mean, if you think about movies of that, if you think about The Mask, you think about popular comedies particularly, they're not any better. So I guess it's of its time in that way, but still, there were games that were better. And I think the first game does a better job of that. Like, there's more variety in the types of women that you encounter. I mean, Rincewind at one point meets the Fool, I think, and says if it was going to be somebody from the old game, why couldn't it have been that cool barbarian lady who is a cool character, who doesn't just serve Rincewind in the plot? Like, she does from a puzzle sense, but in a character interaction sense, she's like, you're beneath me. I don't care about you. I'm on my own adventure, but I'll say things to you that might help you. And that's quite different to any of the women characters in this game. And Kate Robbins doesn't get a lot to do in this game either.
Yeah, I think it's about viewing. It's basically like a game design issue where it's almost like passing one of those tests where if you're thinking that a female character is just there to serve as a vehicle for interaction, then it's actually like you've got to think a little bit more deeply about why they're in the story. And yeah, a lot of the ways that they interact with the women in this story are through their appearance, whether they're attractive or not attractive, whether they could be in a film or not. You know, the elf queen versus the reaction to the dwarf lady. And yeah, they're really interacting in that kind of appearance-based kind of dialogues. The real main question is, though, we really just need justice for Granny Weatherwax.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%. Absolutely. Like, she's so easily tricked at the end that I'm just like, no, that's her deal. She's like a master of headology. Like, even if it had been any other witch, I would have like maybe gone, oh, okay, but not the master of headology. Come on.
Also, if Granny Weatherwax had been in charge of this whole game, it would have been solved in about an hour, so.
Yeah, she just would have gone and had a good talking to. He would have gone straight back to work.
Yeah, like Nanny, you could just fob her off with like a sexy picture of, I guess, Death at the peak of his film star things. Magrat, you could just take her broom while she's looking the other way. But Granny, come on, like that's not okay.
I mean, she doesn't like her broom. It's not even originally her broom, but still.
Yeah, but it's her broom. It doesn't matter if she likes it or not.
That's true.
Mm.
Well, that does bring us to the end. The sort of very last tag is Death takes Windle Poons' spirit off to have a curry before he goes on to the afterlife. And then we see Rincewind on the broom sort of like fly erratically through the air, writing the end before he crashes. Before we get on to some listener questions, are there any other things that people thought or noticed, or any favourite bits or great gags that you want to bring up before we move on?
Let me just have a look through my notes, because they're, as we've established, very comprehensive and not nonsensical at times. A toilet thrown at Death. That's pretty good.
Oh, yeah. They mentioned something like the porcelain scene, which I think is a reference to something else. And then it turns out it's a toilet being dropped on his head. And I don't know what the porcelain scene is, but I feel like that's a film reference I'm not getting.
Yeah, I also don't get that one. I've got throwing banana with double question mark. That's the one where he goes to get the imps and then he's like, he comes back, he's got the boomerang and he throws a banana and suddenly everything's fine. I'm like, okay, sure. That's all right.
I did enjoy that whole thing where the clickies are kind of developed further than they get in the books, where now they're in an era where it's all about special effects. And so they have special effects paint that the imps paint onto the clickies after they've done the filming. And I thought that was kind of fun. And they work for ILM, but that stands for Impish Light and Magic. That was fun.
All right, I've got one thing. So we're going to go back to the vampire that we meet, I think in Act 1, where you steal his teeth, but he's sad and he likes to go to bed at 8 p.m. and you're talking to him in a bar and you trick him away with a rooster, blah, blah, blah. He talks about how he put an ad out for a vampire victim and he thought it'd be more successful. And I remember watching that and being like, oh, like, in real life, that probably would be successful because you get some people, because as has been evidenced by real life examples, like someone who advertised for a victim of cannibalization, he got a response. So someone putting out something like, I'd like to just drink some of your blood, he'd probably be fine. But maybe it was different in 96.
Well, yes, but I think in Ankh-Morpork, you would definitely get people signing up.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't buy that. He's just advertising in the wrong paper.
Yeah.
I do have a giggle at the greengrocer who's become a vampire.
Oh, yeah, the Count Notferato, who's a character from Reaper Man and his wife. I don't know if those are the same jokes from the book. I didn't look them up, but I did enjoy them in this.
See, it's been, 25, 30 years since I've read some of those books, so it's like fresh jokes for me.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of combination of stuff pulled from the books and then all this new stuff. I quite enjoyed being reminded of some of the stuff from the books through this game as well, because some of the gags were great. And some of the dialogue, I feel, was taken directly from the books, but not most of it. Yeah. There's a lot more context given for the puzzles in this game, and I think that is one of the reasons why it does feel easier than the first one. Like I was saying earlier, you give an object that's relevant, but it's the wrong person. You get a bit of dialogue about that. Rincewind never says that doesn't work, but he does say things like, I don't think I could just push that wall down, or I don't think I can pick that up with just my hands. Like the way he says that's not right gives you a little hint. So I quite enjoyed that. I thought that was a much better game design because it kind of rewards the player for trying things rather than just giving them nothing. Yeah. And I also enjoyed the way that, like, at the end of the game, like, it's sort of, the game expands, the world gets bigger, but then at the end of the game, it just closes off most of the world of the game and is like, you just need this bit. And anytime you try to go somewhere that you don't need to go, Rincewind just says, no, I've been there, done that. Great. Just stick to these bits of the game. That's going to make my life easier, I hope. If we don't have anything else, let's get into our listener questions, Liz.
All right, so our first questions come from Molokov via Discord. The first question is, are you a fan of this more cartoony cell animation, Don Bluth, Warner Brothers art style over the pixel cartoony style used in the first game? What about compared to the art style in Discworld Noir? And the second question is, that's death now permanently earwormed into your subconscious.
What do we think about this style? We kind of talked about it. Do we like it?
Yeah, I really love it. I actually think that it brings a lot of life and energy to the characters in a 2D environment. I mean, I'm a huge fan of point-and-click adventure games. I just like graphics with an aesthetic style when they're done well, and I think here they're really done well.
Yeah, and I think you could say many things about it, but one thing you can't say is they didn't pick something and really go for it. That kind of really distinctive aesthetic is always better than something that just looks like everything else. And a lot of the games and other art that stands out to us over time is always something that just goes, we're going to do this. And whether you like it or not, you're going to remember it. And I think this feels very different to the first one. It really looks distinctive. It brings a different kind of perspective or vision of the Discworld to life. Yeah, I kind of dig it too. I think I probably, because I have such a nostalgia for that era of adventure games, I do probably prefer the first one, but I do like this as well. Yeah.
I think too, a big part of my Discworld fandom was consuming the cartoon versions over and over again. Like I probably wore out those VHS tapes. And so for me, this just fits right into my vision of Discworld fandom. So yeah, I just felt right at home with it.
It does look a bit like those as well. It's been so long since I've seen them. I wonder if the wizard designs are inspired by that. I'd have to go back and have a look. Because they were in the 90s too, and probably not too long before this. So I think that's possibly a big influence.
I think each art style suits the game itself. Like this one is fun, bubbly, joyful, and the other one is beautiful but with an edge of suffering. So if I were to play a game, I'd want to play this one based on aesthetics. But if I wanted to gaze upon something and feel something, I'd like to look at the artwork of the first one.
Yes, that's fair. I think, well, I said earlier that there's a lot of nice little attention to detail. I think there's less things going on in the corner of the screen that add something in this one. Like you kind of see everything when you look at the screen, and it's beautiful and it's a lovely art style. Whereas, in the old one, there were things like in the shades, somebody being strangled in a window, and you never interacted with that. You never did it. It's just there to go, this is the rough side of town. There's some bad stuff happening here. And I didn't feel like there was as much of that in this game.
The first game is like watching Hannibal, like the Mads Mikkelsen one, where like you can freeze frame anything, print it out, put it on your wall, and it's beautiful, but like you're really going through it. This one is more like Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
It's a pretty good analogy, actually. Yeah, I'll pay that. What about That's Death?
Yes, it is earwormed into me. And I think I'm going to play it again after this episode just to enjoy outside of preparing for this recording, because it is something that I would listen to again outside of the game. So I think that's something.
I just have a permanent little tap dancing skeleton in my head now.
What a joy.
I love that for you.
Bone Idol's just always there. Look, I like the song. It did not earworm me. I think one of the secrets of Monty...
Change that. we can change that. We can fix that for you. Don't worry.
No.
I know where you live.
No.
I can set a speaker outside your window.
I would not love this song even if it was a worm, Liz, in my ear. I think that's where I'm landing on this song. I think it's good.
Molotov didn't ask if you'd love it.
No, he asked is it earwormed, and it's not. It's not. But I think for me, one of the secrets of Monty Python is kind of like the secret of Doctor Who, right? Which is that there's a lot of it, and a lot of it is not actually very good. We remember the best bits that are very, very good, and then we don't remember all the bits that are maybe not that great. And I think this song is good, but not a great song by the standards of Eric Idle and the songs that he's written. And it doesn't occupy a place in my brain in the same way that, say, like the Universe song or Always Look on the Bright Side of Life does. So, yeah, I think it's good, but no, I'm not still singing it to myself.
I love the Universe song, but it's incorrect. So I listened to it as a teenager, and they asked a question in science class, and I confidently answered, and it was a lyric for the thing. They're like, "What are you saying?" And I'm like, "Okay, all right, I'm gonna go back into my box."
You've brought this story up on the podcast before, and I'll remind you, as I did then,
because it's obviously deeply grained in my psyche.
Well, there is a much later version that he did for, I think it was a TV show hosted by Brian Cox, a science show, where he corrected the science in it, and it's up to date.
That doesn't help me.
No, but I mean, you could enjoy that version of the song.
Yeah, but 15-year-old me can't enjoy the version of the song, and it can't go back and not look ridiculous in physics.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a nice segue, Liz, into the next question from Molokov.
Which is, did they go a bit too far with the blatant Monty Python references? Tough question. Because is there any such thing as too far with a Monty Python reference?
I'm actually so glad you asked this question, because this is actually a really special part of this game for me. Discworld 2 was my gateway to Monty Python. So, you know how I was saying that my dad used to explain pop culture references? One of the reasons that stoning scene is etched on my memory so much because I found it really funny. And my dad was like, "Hey, if you think this is funny, let me show you where this comes from." And so I think this would have been the gateway to me actually watching The Life of Brian.
Wow.
And so I don't know that those two things are so inherently connected for me that it will never go too far with Monty Python because I found The Life of Brian.
Agreed.
That's a beautiful story. I love that. Look, I think at the time, everyone was quoting Monty Python this much. I remember being in university in the late 90s and everyone was doing bits from Holy Grail and Life of Brian and even The Meaning of Life, like even the least popular of the films. And I think my time of that happening in my life is over in 2026 and I don't need it anymore. But I think the reason that I didn't like it as much I was fine with it at the start, but when it kept happening throughout the game, apart from the stoning scene, which I thought was great, they kind of embraced it. I don't think they needed all of the other references for that scene to work. I think they could have done it, and it might have even been better because it would have come a bit out of left field rather than, oh, another Monty Python reference. Oh, except you're really milking this one. But for me, it meant that we were robbed of the more Discworld-y humor, and that the game really leaned into, we're going to make all the new jokes that we write more like this Python stuff because we've got Eric Idle. And I think that there's a conflation of the two because people think British comedy is all the same. Like, not all people, but a lot of people just sort of put it all in one bucket. And I actually don't think there's a massive similarity between Python humor and Pratchett humor. I think there are crossovers. There are some things that are similar, but particularly the later books are really not very Python-esque at all. He doesn't do the same kinds of jokes often. The early ones have more of that sort of stuff in it. And I think I would have liked to have seen more of that, you know? I mean, this game is riffing on some of those early to middle era Discworld books. So it makes sense that that's the tone they've gone for. But I think they just go a bit too far in the Python direction for me. So I don't think it didn't ruin the game for me or anything. I still had a good time. But I think I would have preferred to see more Pratchett-y comedy than Python comedy in a Discworld game.
Yeah, so you're giving me a complex response to that because I was already very on the side of have more Python in there. Make one of the challenges you're fighting a blancmange for Wimbledon. That's something that I would really want to see in there. You make a really good point though. For me, the fact that Eric Idle is the person they have chosen to be Rincewind in this, however, if they had pared back the Python, I'd have been like, why did you choose Eric Idle for this? Because he's so deeply Python. I'm not saying that he can only do one thing, because he's done a lot of things in his career, but at this point, and out of all the Pythons, he's possibly because he's one who does the history of Python. He's really embedded it in a way that the others perhaps are not. It would have been strange to me to have him with his very distinct voice this character and not nod to the fact that he's a Python. So it's a strange balance in that way. If it's a choice between having Eric Idle do this or not, I'd choose Eric Idle doing this. And I think to have Eric Idle do this, you need the Python.
That's fair.
I'm so curious because you've both given really thoughtful answers, but I'm really thinking now about how I kind of lump Monty Python and Terry Pratchett into the same bucket, and maybe that's not actually the case. It's really interesting to me.
Well, I mean, like I say, I think there are similarities, but I think there's more of them in the early Discworld books than there are in the later ones. And I think Pratchett's own voice is quite distinct from the kind of stuff that you see in Python. Yeah, there's crossovers. But I mean, in this, you get a lot of those very Python-esque exchanges that feel like something like the argument sketch or something like that, where it's about the absurdity of a situation and people arguing about it. And that isn't actually something that Pratchett does very much. The prose might point out how absurd something is. And occasionally you have characters be self-aware, but they won't be in such an absurd situation because he's always doing that sort of mirror to the real world. And any absurdity is an absurdity of real life, not an absurdity that is the kind of Python-esque, this would never really happen kind of absurdity, right? So I think there is a very different style of humor. And look, maybe that's something as a comedy nerd and a teacher of comedy writing that I think about more than the average person. But yeah, I think for me, that's something I would like to see. And I think it's interesting. There was never really a Python adventure game. I think they could have made something like this that was Python themed. There was a Monty Python and the Holy Grail video game, but it was this sort of weird thing. I think I've still got the CD of it somewhere. It was this weird sort of collection of mini games. They had a version of Tetris, which was putting people in the dead cart and the old man who's not dead moves around when you try to put him in the right place in Tetris, saying, I'm not dead. That kind of stuff was really silly. And there was a lot of clicking on things, but it wasn't really an adventure game. And I think they could have done something like this instead of that. And I think that would have been amazing. And that's where I would have liked to see them go the whole hog. Whereas here it just felt like a constant reminder that this isn't really the Discworld. This is Eric Idle playing a Discworld character in a Discworld video game. And because they're also constantly reminding you that it's a video game by breaking the fourth wall all the time, we didn't need as much of either of those things. I think a little bit of a lighter touch of both of them would have been better to allow more of the Discworld to shine through.
Is that one of the perils of not having a narrator in the game, in the sense that, like, other video games around this time, I'm thinking of King's Quest, and that had a narrator that was interacting with the story, and it's a kind of mechanic that could have been brought over. But, you know, central to Discworld is the voice of the narrator, providing that commentary.
That's a really good point, because Rincewind becomes the narrator kind of by default, because he's the character doing all the talking. And so he does have to take on a bit of that I know everything kind of persona. I think that's really insightful. I think that's spot on. And you can have a narrator in a video game, but in an adventure game, it's kind of seen as a bit gauche. It's like, oh, you don't really know what you're doing. Like, the characters can't sort of tell the story on their own. It feels like you're telling and not showing.
Well, it is, but actually, I mean, King's Quest IV did it with, you know, and you had this sassy narrator, and even in King's Quest V, you know, you pull out your magic map, it's etched in my brain.
Oh, yeah.
So if those games could have done it, I mean, Discworld had full license, but they decided not to, and I find that really interesting decision. I love that a question about Monty Python has led us to this really deep, you know, my brain has exploded thinking about the theory of comedy. Meanwhile, there's a little dancing skeleton running around in there.
Comedy is deep, folks. But yes, there's also a dancing skeleton.
It's not all in the same bucket, but I think it's a lineage thing. Like, without Monty Python, you don't have the exact humor of Terry Pratchett, and without the Goon Show, you don't have the humor of Monty Python. So it's kind of like having two different stages overlapping. And I always want to see more Terry Pratchett humor, and I would like to see the version of the game that Ben is talking about, where you see more of that come through, like more of the Discworld humor come through. But I also feel like the different media is an opportunity for different interpretations on the source material. So it is nice to see, like, and I know we've had controversial opinions on, like, the television series of The Watch and all that kind of thing, but there is a beauty in seeing how this stuff is filtered through different lenses. And to me, this game is an example of that. And the Monty Python stuff, I happen to also love Monty Python. I still think it's like Pratchett filtered through a Python lens, even though Python probably helped influence Terry Pratchett in some way, in the same way that it influenced anyone who grew up in England at a certain time and influenced the way that their humor went. So I think it's interesting in that way. It doesn't mean that it's not correct to want a game that's purely Pratchett, but it's interesting as an exercise, because we have books that are purely Pratchett. So this is just a new way of viewing them, and that's the worthwhile thing too.
Maybe that's what we get to do with the Discworld tabletop role-playing game.
Oh, yes, which we'll get to very soon. All right.
We'll get to that.
All right. So we've got some comments from Michael Wigfall via Facebook. Michael talks about how this is the first game they ever played that broke the fourth wall, which I loved how that happened so many different ways throughout this game, and also points us to a great review by Mitch Mannix, which we could include the link to in the show notes. Our next question comes from Matthew Gore via Instagram. Did you like this more or less than the first one? I remember the puzzles being a bit easier in 2. I'm going to say Octopus Toilet because I haven't had the chance to say that. I know I didn't play this, but like, that was ridiculous in the first one. So surely this one's a bit more manageable.
I think so. I don't know if I like it better than the first one. I think it's definitely easier. I think I like the story of the first one better. Look, there's part of me that just sees a real missed opportunity to make a new story that's really tailored to an adventure game kind of narrative, rather than what we got with these two games, which is this sort of cobbled together narrative from things that were already in the books. And that's also partly just because, hey, wouldn't it have been great to get some more Discworld stories? But I also understand probably they didn't have full license to do whatever they wanted from Terry, who wanted it to feel like the books. And, you know, I still think they're good.
Throwing objects from afar.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I think I do prefer the first one a little bit, even though it was much harder, just because I think tonally it felt a bit closer to what I wanted from a Discworld game, and I do slightly prefer the art. But and I also really like John Pertwee being in it as one of his final roles. So that's kind of a nostalgic reason to like the first one better for me too.
When I prepared for this podcast, I kind of wanted to separate out my thinking of like, what do I remember from the first game? What do I remember from the second? And are those favorite bits I'm remembering, are they from the first or second game? And actually, there a lot of those iconic moments that I still remember are from the second game. And I think it just came at a time that was really important to me in my cultural development and learning about all those pop culture references and, just laughing and, not thinking too deeply around where these came from necessarily. I didn't know where all the references came from, but I thought they were funny. And yeah, that for me is really special. And I think point and click adventures from this period are just very special to me generally because my family used to sit down and play them together. And so that for us was something we did as a family. And so a lot of these games have that nostalgia of spending time with people who really love me. So that's really special for me.
I love that. I love that for you as well. Too. That's beautiful. I played a few games, and the ones that I mostly remember were, I think, one of the maybe King's Quest. No, I think it was one of the Space Quest games and the Monkey Island games with some friends, but I never played them with my family. But that was that similar kind of experience that we kind of talked about earlier, where we were just shouting ideas at each other and trying to figure it out together, which is a lot of fun. And actually, listener, one of the things I'm hoping to do for our subscribers is maybe stream playing these games for people who haven't had the opportunity to play them themselves. And we can recreate that kind of experience where you can shout at me what you think we should do. So if that's something you'd like, please let me know. I'll try and make that happen.
And just adding in there, would you like to stream me playing these games? Because I feel like the shouting would go much higher. Not sure if it's from me or for you, but yeah. Because I'll do it, but it'll take a long time. You have to commit.
Yeah.
All right, so we got 2 more questions. The first one comes from Lachlan via Discord. As someone who hasn't played it, where does it rank in the unfairness scale of Monkey Island 1 to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Oh my God. I think it's, I think there is a continuum between those games. I don't know if I would put Monkey Island 1, The Secret of Monkey Island, on an unfairness scale.
This is the continuum that Lachlan has given us, so this is the scale we're working with.
Okay. I guess there are some puzzles even in that first Monkey Island game that are kind of very difficult to work out. But for those of you who haven't played it, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy text adventure game is also, like the first Discworld game, right up there as having some of the most difficult to figure out puzzles ever of all time. Even quite early on in the game, to get a Babelfish, Forward Prefect does not just stick one in your ear like happens in the book or the radio series. You have to go through a whole rigmarole to get one out of a vending machine that is very complicated, and you must get it exactly right or you cannot progress. And that is just one of many puzzles in that game. So it is very, very difficult and quite unfair, and you can die a lot and you have to go back to a previous point in the game where you've saved it. So yes, that is a fair thing to ask. Where does it rank? Where do we think? If we imagine maybe The Secret of Monkey Island is like I'm going to say a 0 because I want to be nice to that game. I think it's actually very well designed, most of its puzzles. And then maybe like 50 for the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Very difficult, very unfair puzzles. You really can't figure it out from context. You just got to try trial and error. Where's this sit?
I definitely think it's in the middle. It's not as hard as the first one. The Dig is the game that's up the top for the 50 for me. That game, like, absolutely. I'd learned what rage quitting was in that game.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, for me, I think the most of this, if someone who's in their teenage years can figure out this game, then I feel like it should be okay.
But you were saying you've got a different brain then.
I've got a different brain, yeah. Definitely got a different brain.
Well, I think partly it's in 2026. I don't know if people got the patience for an old school adventure game most of the time. I think they want more positive feedback quicker. And one of the things that these games kind of rely on is that you're going to have a long time playing them, not because there's so much story, but because you're going to spend so much time figuring out what to do and wandering around enjoying being in the world of the game, you know? And I think that was true then. I don't think it's as true now. I think people would expect you to be doing more things and having more positive feedback.
Although the Game of the Year, Australian Game of the Year last year, The Drifter, point-and-click adventure game in the tradition of classic LucasArts adventures. So highly recommend that one. But I think there is a group of people, and maybe they're just nostalgia hungry like me, but I have played some pretty good point-and-click adventures in the last couple of years.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I'm in that same boat, but I'm just wondering if like the mainstream video game audience for which this was pitched, and I think that's a big reason why they got Eric Idle, right? They wanted this to go off the shelves. They wanted Discworld and Eric Idle to be the things that sold millions of copies of this. It wasn't meant to be a little indie darling, you know, that maybe sold 10,000 copies and paid for 5 people to work on it. You know, this was a bigger thing than that. And I wonder if there's an appetite for that. I definitely think there's still enough people who want to play adventure games that they can be good. And while I haven't played the full version of the Drifter yet, I did play the little sort of original short version that they made as a proof of concept. And I really liked it. So I'm keen to play it.
It's wild from there. Like that demo is just like the tip of the iceberg.
I bet.
It's great.
Yeah, I agree it's in the middle. I think it's more up the Monkey Island end. I think actually this is easier than The Secret of Monkey Island 2. There's a few puzzles in that where I will fully admit, like when I went back to replay it, and this is someone who, as a teenager, finished Monkey Island 2, won a prize from a video game magazine for sending in a solution to it. But when I replayed it about 5 years ago, I got stuck at a part and I just sort of went, oh, this is taking me too long to figure out. I'm going to stop playing this game now. I just cannot figure out what I need to do to proceed. It was a lot harder than the first one. And I think they only in a few places. Most of it is fine, but there's a few places where it's really difficult. So I think this is easier than that.
Put a number on it. Kat gave it 25. She said halfway.
I would say like more 15. I think it's, and maybe even a 10. I think it's pretty close to the original Monkey Island. It's definitely harder than the original Monkey Island, but I don't think way harder.
I also feel like, are you solving this now in 2026 or are you solving this in 1996 when you didn't have the internet as we know it today?
Right, yes.
The fact that people could get through these games without, well, actually we did have hint books, but you had to get them in the box or mail away for them. But yeah, I don't know, like maybe it is easier than I thought it was, but I don't know.
You can have a 96 number and a 2026 number. That's allowed.
Okay,
yeah, maybe it's a 25 in 96 and a 15 in 2026.
Look, I'm going by my capability of solving quite a lot of this game when I played it for this podcast without looking at any hints and really only looking at hints because I'm like, look, I think I could get this, but it might take me another hour and I really don't have enough time to do that. So I might have
Perfectly
a bit
valid.
of a rose-tinted idea of how difficult it is. I don't know. Maybe that's wrong. I'll go up to 15 to 20. How about that?
Yeah. Except for now.
Make the guest feel better.
This is not a judgment on you. Like, I'm just sort of trying to place it relative to these other games, you know?
I feel like you can feel better by the fact that I simply did not play the games. I just watched them and gasped at how difficult they were.
That's fine. That's fair.
Yeah. All right. So our final question before a bonus game is from Sven via Discord. What was the riddle or quest you found most illogical? I'm going to go through my notes.
That's a good question because a lot of them, I feel like they did such a better job in this one compared to the first one of making the puzzles and their solutions kind of make sense. Even though, you know, it was kind of a nonsense sense, but there weren't anywhere as like, why would you do that?
Why did Rincewind throw a bunch of chili into the flowers in Act 1?
Because in order to get dribbly candles, the woman in the traveling shop tells him that you have to the bees have to be sweating to make the right kind of wax to make dribbly candles.
Okay. All right.
Which is a very silly thing, but it is kind of established. And so, yeah.
I'm going to go with taking the photograph of the cave paintings then, based on my observations. Not because it's illogical, but because it's just a bit left field.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense when the Black Sheep says, I can't join the Actors Guild unless they know that my ancestry is from a faraway place, which, again, like it seems like an obscure reference to equity rules that would no longer be in place in 2026. But yeah, I can see that.
I also like that the second note on this question is the others may want to inject and explain why this quest is super logical and you were just not a pro gamer.
It's true. I am a pro gamer.
We're not late enough. We didn't get good at playing this game.
I'm only good at playing one game, as I've talked about, and that is a very specific version of Mortal Kombat, and I can only do the towers. but I was very good at that as one character.
I'll say I've finished Elden Ring, but I'm still not sure if I've actually finished Discworld 2. Discworld 1 for that matter.
That says something, I think, about this game, perhaps. Do you want to revise your difficulty number?
50. It's a 50.
It's not as difficult as The Hitchhiker's Guide, but it's more difficult than Elden Ring. I don't know if that really... It's a very different kind of difficulty, isn't it?
Can you imagine a Discworld Souls-like game? Actually, this is a Discworld Souls-like.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I will say I'm dying on the hill of the unicorn. The logic of that doesn't, they're putting the orangutan in your pocket for one just doesn't even make any sense.
I think figuring out that he's the one who'll do it with you is probably the weak link in that puzzle, because I don't remember there being any clue that he's up for it. Because Granny Weatherwax tells you that if anybody who's not a magical creature, like a unicorn or a couple of other examples, goes into the elf realm, then she'll just catch them. And you find a horse costume in the costume department in Holywood. So those things kind of all feel very logical. And then you've got to make it look like a unicorn. And I already figured out, well, the only thing I've got that looks anything like a horn is also a horn, which is the hooter from the Fool's Guild. So that kind of all made sense. But
sure.
when you try to put it on by yourself, I mean, it made a kind of sense. But when you try to put it on by yourself, he says, it's a pantomime horse. I can't do it by myself. And I don't remember there being any kind of indication of who's going to do this with me. And I guess the thing is you have to remember that they were really good friends and having a drink together at the start of
But then
the
he's playing croquet.
game.
I'm like, and now he's like an NPC. Like, I'm just kind of
Yeah, and they're still arguing about Monkey, you know.
I think that the luggage would make a much better rear end to a fake horse than Rincewind.
I tried to do
Yeah,
that.
that makes more sense because you could have the luggage as your bum and,
That does remind me. I did want to say the one thing I really missed from this game, the luggage is not as cute in this game. Like it's not as animated. It doesn't wag its little bum like it's a happy little dog. Which is more appropriate because that's not really its personality. But it does have a handle that looks very much like an angry pair of eyes and a mouth, which I did enjoy. But it's not really animated in the same way. It just follows you around.
The cute budget was used up on Binky.
Is the luggage ever cute in the books? I thought it was a little bit psychotic.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Psychotic can be cute though.
Totally. But in the first game, it was like a cute little dog. And I enjoyed that. It's not true to the books, but that's fine.
Just like Hannibal's cute.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's fair. That the middle of that puzzle is like, how do I know that? But now that I think about it, I think it actually makes more sense than I thought. So now I don't know. I don't know the answer to this, Sven.
See, no, I just watched the person do it and I was like, yep, sure, that's happening. They're now in the realm. I didn't unpick how illogical it was in the stacking of the things. And honestly, no shade, but you explaining it through those steps made it seem even more complicated.
Okay.
You're just telling us you're a pro gamer and it's super logical.
Yeah.
I will say there were a couple where it wasn't obvious you could go somewhere. And so I didn't find the thing I needed for a while. Like, for example, I never found Susan's bedroom. And then and actually, I want to say, Rincewind comes off as quite a bit of a creep in this game. Like, he looks up a grate at the milkmaid, under her dress, and he steals, someone's petticoat.
It's a mannequin at least, but...
He steals Susan's pajamas. What a creep. It's not okay. If you think about it too much. But, he's an adventure game protagonist, so... But then he keeps talking about goth girls.
Yes, that was weird.
I don't think he ever calls them that, but he really talks about them in a really creepy kind of way. And as someone who, hung out with and dated a lot of goth girls when I was in university, I don't know how I feel about it. I do know how I feel about that. I feel a bit weird about it coming from Eric Idle as Rincewind, but yeah.
It's wizard suit, Larry.
It is. That's very good.
All right.
I think that brings us to the end. Kat, thank you so much for joining us. What a joy it has been to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I have loved being here and talking about one of the games that ended up making me want to be a game writer. So I'm thrilled to be here.
That's awesome.
It was so fun.
Yeah. If people want to find out more about your adventures that you've written and also your other writing and your reviews of games, where can they find out more?
So I'm on the internet as Catclay, KATCLAY.com. So you can find me on most social media networks and on YouTube there. I'm excited because I've just wrapped up doing a day job last year and now I am a full-time game writer. So you will be seeing more games coming from me. So do please say hello on social media, even if you just want to talk about how my opinions on Discworld 2 are wrong. That's also okay too.
Politely, please.
Politely.
That goes without saying. Our listeners are very nice.
Yes.
But thank you so much. And I think really based on this, we will have to get you back in when we do the role-playing games. We will find a way. If you're keen, we will make it happen. So look out for that in the future. Thank you, listeners, also for being with us on our journey as we are in probably, our final year of doing these regular episodes. We're running out of things to talk about. We've only got a couple of novels left, but there's still like one more adventure game. We will talk about Discworld Noir. Got that slated for later in the year, and we will talk about a few other things, including the thing we're going to talk about next episode, Liz.
Yes, which is the folklore of Discworld.
Yes, I'm excited about this one because I've actually never read it. I have referenced it a couple of times when looking up things for research for the podcast, but I've never read the whole book. And I'm very excited because just like the Science of Discworld was like, here's, how the Discworld can teach us about science. This is kind of like the opposite of that. It's like, here's how real world folklore has informed the Discworld. And so I'm very excited. I've started reading it. There's some great stuff just in the introduction. So I'm very excited to read the whole book.
Oh, no, I haven't started reading it. I'm behind already. All right.
No, that's all right. Now, it is worth mentioning that there have been several editions of this book that were updated to include more of the Discworld novels as they came out. We will be using the version of the book that was the last one published, which was from 2014, which goes all the way up to Raising Steam. So now is a good time to do it when we've covered all of the Discworld novels up to and including Raising Steam. So if you're looking for a copy of the book, try and get that one. It's pretty easy. That's the current one. So, and there are no spoilers for the Shepherd's Crown in it. Jacqueline Simpson, who's the co-author of this book, who's a professional folklorist, did write some notes about the Shepherd's Crown, but they only appeared in some special editions of the book itself. So there will be no spoilers for it in the Folklore of Discworld, and we won't spoil anything about that book until we get to our last episode. But thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you to our subscribers like Lachlan and all the people who ask questions on Discord, including Molokov and Sven. You keep us going. Without your support, we wouldn't be making this show after this. Oh my God, this is our 9th year, Liz?
I'd not be doing maths on this.
That's a long time of making a Discworld podcast, but it's true. This is our 9th year. We will be 9 years old in November. So our 6-ish year mission is more and more of a joke as we continue going. But we are ready and we are willing, and you make it possible. So thank you. And if you are not already a subscriber or you want to support us, you can find out more about how to do that on our website, which is at pratchettpodcast.com. You can find out how to support us monetarily. You can support us just by telling a friend who's into Terry Pratchett that we exist. And you can also go to the website to ask us questions about the next book. You can do that also on social media, where you'll find us on most of the platforms. We're not really using X/Twitter anymore, so don't ask us questions there. But if you are asking on social media, you can use a hashtag. If you've got questions about this game or follow-up comments, you can use the hashtag Pratchett92. And if you've got questions about the folklore of Discworld, our next episode, you can use the hashtag Pratchett93. And until next time, remember, that's death. You've been listening to Pratchat, the monthly Terry Pratchett Book Club podcast with Pratchatters Elizabeth Flux, Ben McKenzie, that's me, and guest Kat Clay. Pratchat is produced and edited by me on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation. Our music is by David Ashton. We're on social media as Pratchat or Pratchat Podcast, and you can listen to past episodes and support the production of new ones via pratchatpodcast.com. Join the conversation for this episode using the hashtag Pratchat92.
Pratchat is brought to you by Splendid Chaps Productions. We make entertainment for your ears, like the Doctor Who podcast Splendid Chaps and time travel comedy series Night Terrace. To find out more, visit splendidchaps.com.